think about that rate of change in terms of
That's
the
right.
AI's capabilities. So how do you think about proficiency? Is it a one-time thing, or is it a continuous?
Yeah, it's difficult to find an objective metric for proficiency, but it's not impossible. I mean, if you ask everyone, are you proficient in AI? People are going to tell you, of course I am. I use it every day. I use ChatGPT at home for me, right? But what does it mean to be proficient? And then we did some research and then look at what are the different organizations, different teams. The section team actually has proficiency benchmark that you design something that I believe it looks at the syntax of the prompt, how do you structure the prompt, and then a little bit of self-reflection on what are the things that you know about AI, and then you score it, right? 60, 61, 75 or something. And at least you have a baseline. And then what you do is that you measure, then you upskill. And in upskilling, there's a multiple set of initiatives that we can talk about, and then you measure again, right? And then with that, you start seeing, okay, so we are moving people. And then the idea is that you start moving people. So what's tricky here, Greg, is that there's a whole range of proficiency. You have the experts, right? Usually less than 5% of the team. You'll have the skeptics that are very difficult to move, and you have a lot of people in the middle. But when you really start moving some of the people in the middle from they use it every now and then to a little more proficient, you unlock a lot of productivity for the entire team, right? So, and it's hard to upskill people and to measure at different levels because their expectations are different. When our CMO says we want everyone to be proficient, for an expert, that definition is different than for someone that just a casual user, right? And then the access to training and things like that. So you can all go out there and then look for training everywhere, LinkedIn Learning, Maven. There's so much training out there, but you have to find a way to measure with a benchmark that is established, that has some recognition, and then you can work with over time.
Yeah, and again, we're going to stay with this kind of phase one, and then we'll get to where we're at today, and looking ahead. But staying with this first sort of 6-9 months, you said you started as a people initiative. But what I interpret that as you saying you did not therefore get as much resistance or anxiety, perhaps, because you led with this, hey, this is good for all of us, which obviously it is. Just curious what you think about sort of the level of resistance or anxiety, if there is any, or is it a small group, those skeptics, that kind of more isolated, and you've been able to get everybody else sort of moving along this change journey?
Well, I mean, if everybody is reading, we all subscribe to the same podcasts and newsletters and things like that, and there's a lot of fear about what it means when everyone becomes more productive, right? And I run an operations team, and an operations team, I mean, the name of the game of an operations, the strategy is always try to do more with less, right? And then what does that mean? That you can produce more work, faster work, higher quality work with the same amount of people. That's one way to do it. And then other ways to cut the formula that could be scary for people. But what really matters here is just giving people the skills so they can use these tools and combine it with the creativity that they have, and combining with the subject matter expertise that they have for whatever area of marketing in this case.
Yeah. And let's bring us up to date. So where are you now? In terms of like Q4, what's happened, and what are your priorities in that next 90 days, as much as you can share?
Sure. So the first initiative was, so if you start thinking about AI, a lot of people think, innovation, the edge of innovation. We have to create things that are incredible. So that's really important. But at the same time, you have to raise the floor of proficiency, right? So we started with that because like I mentioned before, all the productivity that you get from the aggregate of all of the team members using it and becoming more productive. We have done things like make training available to the team. And the training that is available is through online certification and programs like that one. And in addition to that, we have monthly workshops. So we take these experts, right, that are super excited about it, and they have some use cases, and we invite them to share with the team. And we have these monthly sessions, this showcase. They love the spotlight, and they contribute some of the things that they have. Also, we're working with managers. So managers really matter. I mean, all of you in the audience that are people managers or have managers working for you, it is incredibly important that you get them to normalize the use of AI, even with simple things at the beginning, right? Get them to share, give them on a Friday, like, share your prompt that you use for home life balance or things like that. That makes a big difference of normalizing the use. And if your manager is really expecting that you use AI, they're going to use it. They're going to explore the tools. And then the other thing is that you have to create a community, right? Not just for the individual teams, but we lit up this Slack channel that now has at least 2/3 of the organization participating, and it's just for experimentation, right? So we have some moderators that share things, and we have people that love to contribute. They go and share it, and then the emojis and the likes, and I love this, and here's another idea. That makes a big difference in terms of people. So the first step so far has been raising the floor of proficiency.
I want to go back to the manager, Leo, because I think that's a really, really important insight. I think we forget how much of change can either thrive or frankly die, right, at that mid-level. You can have executives who are championing the change, and you have ambitious and growth-oriented ICs, right, individual contributors who are doing their thing ground up, but the managers aren't bought in. Was there different training for them, or they were included in the same training? And did you have expectations for them that you communicated to them in terms of their behavior?
We are working on it. It's not completely. We're experimenting some of these things. I can tell you an example that is very, very recent. So this morning there was an offsite with managers for one of the organization, and we're trying to do this thing that in every offsite you need to have an AI workshop, right? If you want funding like that would be like my dream to have it. If you want funding for an offsite, you have to have at least 2 to 4 hours on a workshop. And in this workshop, and it was for managers, it was fantastic. We did some of the basic, like this is what good prompting is about, and these are opportunities for research and analysis and some use cases for them. But then the last hour was a facilitated workshop on, okay, let's just build a Copilot agent. And it was 4 teams, and there was a little bit of a competition, friendly competition. And then we voted at the end, and we closed it with celebration of the winner, of course, but also telling them, like, this thing that we're doing here, you have to build champions on your teams. You have to make sure that all of this happens with your own teams, that you normalize it, that you have fun. Even if some of the use cases are not necessarily at the beginning, bringing in all of business results that you're expecting, right? In your ROI journey, I would say you have to, it's people metrics first, right? Proficiency, engagement, people participating. Then you start looking into, okay, what are the workflows that I can start automating that have productivity ROI and things like that. And those workflows actually going to get you to the business impact that you want, whether it's higher conversion rate or more time for outbound calls or things like that.
I love this idea of can't do an offsite, or you won't get budget for an offsite unless you include some AI. I think these are the kind of things they can sound very tactical, but they all add up, right? And they all add up to be change management, at a programmatic level, whether it be lunch and learns, hackathons, workshops at the offsite. All these things, I think they work. They just take a lot of work.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you volunteer for this, by the way, Leo? Did someone tap you on the shoulder and say, you got to do this? Or did you kind of raise your hand saying you want to do this? Like, how'd that come about?
I mean, look, my journey on this one, I'm sure that is like pretty much the same of more than, how do we have 3,000 people in the audience today? You all became very curious about this technology like 2.5 years ago, right? November, 22, when ChatGPT was out, you started exploring, and then you started using other tools, Midjourney and Synthesia and 11 Labs for audio, and you start exploring things. But I was very fortunate that there was a leadership development program that encouraged us to start like pushing the limits on the way that we work. So I used that program and the project that we had with that team as a sandbox for experimentation, right? And then you're starting to show to the executives these are the type of things that you can do. And obviously, when these mandates and these initiatives starting happening, of course, I raised my hand, right? When CMO called for a program for AI upskilling, I volunteer, and then some of the other team members volunteer. And I think that that's one thing that I would encourage all of you to do. Raise your hands, be brave. Even if you think that you don't know it all, go out there and say, I can make it happen, because it is a combination of technical and people skills and change management skills. And you're going to get surrounded by teams that really know how to motivate teams and propagate knowledge. And then you're going to get that support. So all you need is to be brave, raise your hand, and start pushing these things forward.
Okay, now we're going to switch, Leo. The conversation gets harder the longer we go into it, because we want to get as you've done. You've taken us down this journey, which I appreciate.
You know what I mean?
Kind of in like reality, sort of.
My bad. I'm trying to close all these windows.
Like some of our other guests. So let's get to
the thing that I was on earlier with those Titan folks. I always watch because they're here in Austin, and the dude I know, Gabriel, I met him in person, but he has all these other CEOs that are local to Austin that are building shit.
I see.
So the guy they had on here today, he built a company to where it's called GrantX.ai. And basically it's a service where they find grants and shit for you. And then he also does consulting. So like, say if we have a business and we do have a business, but let's say we got a client who is nonprofit.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, are you interested in, what's your funding looking like? Are you applying for grants? Where we can actually provide like a list of grants that would be, that would align with their particular mission or their particular business.
Yeah.
And provide that as a service as well.
So we can build up a knowledge base of all the different services and the criteria, and then see what people fall and meet that criteria.
Yep.
And then recommend those to them.
They're charging like $3.99 for freelancers, and I think it was like $7.99
for what? For and this is
if you got multiple clients.
Oh, okay.
It's called GrantX. I think it's GrantX.ai.
That's what's up. GrantX. Interesting.
But like my point of bringing it up is like, through keeping up with Gabriel, this Titan.ai shit, he's bringing folks on there that are actually in Austin. So I'm like, eventually it's like, all right, well, where are they all getting together at? And then we need to be in that same room and hearing their different pain points and stuff on how they built what they built. Because one of the guys, the CEO that was on there, he was like, yeah, man, it was like, we launched a product, we didn't like what we were doing. He's like, we scrapped it. He's like, we started over and it took about another 6 months before we launched again. He's like, but when we launched the second time, it was like, that's when the shit took off.
That's crazy.
So I like to just hear other people's stories, and it's like, oh, they're going through the same shit. Okay, this is what they did to kind of get over it. And it's like, either that works, that would work for us, or don't.
You can start thinking about workflows, right?
So
and then workflows, you can manually do them, or you can also use automation tools to have access to them. Zapier, Make.com, those things. I'll give you one example of one of the members. In creating segments for the contacts that we reach out to, the data can be very unstructured, right? You have data from multiple countries.
Yeah, because then it becomes a money game.
It could be spelled in different ways, or it could be in different languages and things like that. So what this member did is that from the tool, the CDP exports a JSON file with all of the unstructured data, then takes it to an OpenAI loop, saying, with a prompt saying, just clean it up. This is the criteria we have. We get a JSON file back, and we upload it into the tool that we use for CDP. Nice, clean. So what happens with that? First of all, manual review of 5,000 contacts will probably take a week, right? One by one. And then the other thing that happens is that the quality increases. And when you send those communications out that you're going to send, the conversion rate increases. The unsubscribe rate decreases, right? These are an amazing improvement on quality. And by the way, there are other things. Imagine, so Autodesk makes software for people that design and make things, right? So let's say that you want to reach executives in architecture firms in, I don't know, Germany or whatever. what is the business title of an executive in Germany? They could be like, I don't know, 50, 100 variations. And if you start to put that into a code one by one, you're never going to get them right. But then AI has the ability to actually parse all of those titles. And it's like, yeah, this sounds like it could be an executive, and it's included in the list. And now we have a much greater opportunity for conversion rate and reaching the right customers.
Yep,
that's number two.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I can go into the more complex level if you would like me to.
Do it. Let's do it. No, you're on a roll. The audience loves it. Keep going.
All right. So the next one is when these workflows become like true enterprise orchestration, right? And then this is when you just don't copy in these JSON files and upload manually, but then you create an automation. You know, when a webinar ends, you know, there's a webhook that triggers this thing and whatnot. This is tricky because you have to tap into enterprise platforms for data and for things that are actually very sensitive. And there's centralized governance. Then you need engineering support. Right. So one example that we have is when some of the sales teams are having calls with some of the customers, we take the transcript, and then the transcript is processed by an AI and then capture a summary, the opportunity, a bunch of things that on average it will take like 25 minutes for a rep to actually do that work and enter that work in the CRM. So you're saving that time. What do you do with that time? Well, the ROI is incredibly high if you use that time, the accumulated time, to more outbound efforts, right? You can reach out to other customers, and then you have quality and consistency. And then there's another automation that happens, that there's a summary that is sent to a Power BI dashboard, and then people can actually see, the managers can see how the team is performing. So I go back to all of those levels, right? Individual proficiency, you just use the tools yourself, you build your agents. Team workflows, right? That you can start sharing with some of the people that have the same role, right? Because your productivity, you're going to multiply if you share with your peer, right? Here's my agent, here's my use case. And then enterprise orchestration that requires a strong partnership with engineering.
Yeah.
But there's one more thing. There is something that we have noticed about a new role that is emerging. Right, and you may have heard about this go-to-market engineer role, and it's an interesting concept, kind of controversial, right? Because now you have marketers that can act as product managers, engineers, because they understand the tools, they understand the data, but there's another difference, that their compensation in many cases is tied to financial performance, right? So it's not necessarily an engineer, but it's someone that is in the go-to-market practice that is data savvy, tool savvy, and we believe that is the marketer of the future. And we want to create an environment in which, after they become proficient, which is what we're working on, they have this digital ecosystem when they can create these automated workflows within a proper governance that is not going to break things or do something that is not in a trusted way.
Yeah, I love it. Leo, I want to highlight one thing you said for my team. Hopefully some of them are listening, and the audience, because we've been keeping the list of what you need to train people on or upskill, right? We all know about prompting. Now we call it context engineering. We've talked about teaching people how to fact check AI, and I think that we should be teaching kids in middle school to fact check AI rather than giving them a hard time about using AI. We've talked about teaching people how to do their own workflow audits, right? Really teaching this. Because it's a skill, or it's a learned skill where you can look at your own workflows, right, and audit them, and then see where AI could be introduced. And you just added another one, which I love, which is, we're going to have to get to this too, right? Which is, if you basically how to reinvent your role and how to redirect your time to the most valuable activities. And most people probably know that, but if there's just a little bit of a structure or a little bit of coaching to help people do that, which is, hey, stop and reflect on. Yeah, if you could save an hour here, certainly, go walk the dog or take a yoga class, or if you really care about hitting your sales number, reorient that time, right? So, as you said, outbound is going to be really valuable if you're in sales, a really, really valuable activity. So I love this idea of sort of role reinvention. We're going to have to teach people, I think, and support them.
So
reinvent their roles, right? And into stuff they enjoy doing, hopefully, and that has higher value, right?
Right. So in one conversation that you and I had some time ago, you show me your desktop, and then you have this great picture of your screen, and then you call it, I think it's your Copilot or your Claude monitor. Hello, Captain. Remember? And then you said everything that I'm working on this monitor, I run it by an AI, right? Because it gives me, your words, you said 30 additional IQ points, right?
Yep.
So fantastic. So take it to the next level, right? Now every single task that you do, how do you optimize it, right? How do you automate these type of things? And I know that there's this concern that the productivity is going to reduce. Okay, chances are that we're not going to be doing a lot of the manual work that we do now, but new jobs will emerge, new skills will emerge. You probably are going to have to oversee some of these workflows. I mean, the workflows will break. It needs authentication with the data sources. It needs permissions. It needs, the minute that GPT-5 came out, now we have to retrofit all of those automations to start using the new model. So new things will emerge, and there's so much opportunity right now for people who actually embrace, this new way of working.
Yeah, we're running out of time, Leo, and I can't let you go without asking you one more tough question. I want to get back to ROI and really the measurement of it, because we've all been talking all day, and I talk about it all the time, productivity gains from using these tools in our day-to-day workflows. How are you guys trying to measure that? Are you doing it like by a survey, which I think is a valid way? I mean, just asking people, are you more productive? Do you feel more productive? That kind of thing. Are you? Are you measuring output so the team, a same size team, is able to produce more? Or again, is that something that you're going to kind of worry about next year, because that's not yet like the nuts and bolts of the business case aren't yet required? But just where are you guys at with this?
Well, there's multiple ways to measure. So some of the main metrics are proficiency, like we talked about, and how to measure that, and then productivity. Productivity is tricky because it should not necessarily be a survey. It should be quantified. So in for example, our campaign execution process, we have a series of tasks, and then we have a team working on automating these tasks, from the moment that a ticket is created all the way to the moment that the campaign goes out, activated in whatever channel it is. So we can measure that because they're timestamps, right? And then the more that we introduce training and then we introduce automation workflows that improve all of the steps along the way, we are going to see that the time to market is reduced. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it, Greg, is the effectiveness of a lot of our campaigns, the effectiveness of our, say, personalized experience that we have on the website, although it is not exactly one-to-one in terms of attribution of the AI effort to the conversion rate or things like that, but we're going to see that some of the basic business metrics are going to continue to increase, to improve.
Yeah. Okay. All right, one last question. Parting advice, especially to marketers, because I think, marketing is a great place to start, as we all know, with Gen AI. Give some parting advice to a marketing leader as they start the journey that you started 9 months ago.
So I can share three things. The first one is that you have to declare your policies and your platforms. Like if you're going to be a Copilot shop, you declare, we are a Copilot shop, because you need to stop the shadow AI. Your experts are going to get frustrated, like Taylor told us, and start using other tools, and it's very risky if you start using company data outside. So plain English guidance, you have to declare the platform and your policies. The second one is that you need to stand up these champions, right? The people that have not only the technical skills, but that they are facilitators, that they know how to run workshops. You want to empower them, invest in them, so they can start building use cases and then sharing them with the team. And then the other one is just starting the next 3 months, just pick 3 workflows, right? Redesign them using AI in some of the steps, even if it's manual at the beginning, and have a clear KPI for it. Are you looking for conversion rate? Are you looking for time to market? What is what you're looking for? Then run it for 6 or 8 weeks, you measure, and then you publish the results, like broadly, loudly, so everybody can hear this thing. If you do that, and if you raise your hand, I want to do this thing, start small, share loudly, you're going to be raising the bottom of proficiency together with your team.
Awesome. By the way, I just bought us more time. So I'm going to...
Are you going to be out and about
on each one of those.
today?
Let's do the AI policy first. You said be clear about the communication. Where are you on this continuum of it's a carrot or a stick? Are you going to mandate it, or are you going to incent it? How do you feel about that, and or when do you switch if you don't see the outcome you want?
I'm supposed to be in.
We're not thinking about it that way.
That just reminded me.
So we're working on an
yeah, hit me, man. We'll definitely link.
The team is working. It's really important
we'll
that you
definitely
get the team to be bought into the manifesto.
All right, later, bro.
So you need to get the champions and even the folks that lead the enablement teams to write it. And then in this manifesto, you have guiding principles. Some are a little more philosophical and some are more practical. Philosophical ones, for example, you have to remind people that we're pairing human ingenuity with AI horsepower, right? Or that you want to do ethical and responsible AI. Or another principle is we encourage self-organizing teams. Like we can't have a bottleneck for, let me review your workflow. I mean, if you have 600 people and you're giving them the tools, you need to trust them. So you have self-organizing teams. And then you establish some boundaries. I don't know if this could necessarily be called a stick, but the boundaries are like we only use approved platforms. That's a mandate. No shadow AI, right? And then we encourage reuse, for example. It's another thing.
Please leave your...
So this declaration is the AI manifesto.
Yep. So Leo, your second point was about champions, and my question is related, which is, in your mind, is there a tipping point? And did you think about sort of a percentage of active users or proficient users? Did you think about this as, I've got my skeptics and I've got my champions, but do I have to get 25% or 50%, over that tipping point? In your mind, is there a tipping point, and if so, what is it?
We haven't necessarily. I mean, it's more a practical. So if you want to train people and make sure that everybody has an understanding of manifesto or understanding of a common curriculum that you want to teach, a way of working, and that they have an opportunity to develop things. So at the beginning, the intent is to train a group of, let's call it 15 people. But what's important here is that these people need to be embedded with the different business units, right? Like someone on the brand team or the communications team or the marketing team that supports education or the marketing team that supports the channel or field marketing. These are very different use cases. So you need to have champions in those organizations that can facilitate workshops and they understand the business problems that specific organization have. So you can't have like a standalone, everybody's going to report to me type of champions. The champions need to be people that it's a part-time job in a way, right? So they go and they work with their different business units. And again, not necessarily the most technical people, right? What you want is the people that have the basic level of proficiency, but know how to teach, know how to facilitate, and know how to bring people along.
Yeah. All right, I want to get to your 3 workflows, your 3 pilots, or as you suggested. What happens, and I've seen this question in chat all day, what happens if you're 0 for 3 on the first 3? You don't have success out of the gate, and the first 2 or 3, or let's say all 3, don't deliver, don't work. The workflow doesn't generate any productivity benefit, or the AI can't do it. Just what's your advice to people when there's been a stumble or two, because there's been plenty, right, all over the place with AI. So how do you recover from that? What's our talk track in that scenario?
Well, it can happen with anything, whether you use AI or not, right? If you're using a new process, a new workflow, the workflow may not bring the productivity gains that you're expecting. It's a hard question for me. I'm an optimist, Greg, and it's hard for me to think that this is not going to work. You heard it today. There's so many opportunities to make to improve the quality of your work, to improve the amount of work that you can process. So if you work with the champions and then you become proficient, chances are that you're going to find a workflow or a way of working that is going to make something better. But you just need to measure the right thing. What really matters to you as that specific business person. I wouldn't be able to tell you what is the KPI for your business, Greg, right? But a marketer that has a champion working with them, trying to solve their business problem, I'm sure that they can come up with a workflow that's a winner.
Leo, I love the way you think about this. I love the way you talk about it. So I'm going to throw you a curveball question. I apologize in advance. Remind me, are you a parent? Do you have kids?
Yeah, I have 3 kids, 3 boys.
Three boys. Okay. And middle school, high school, graduate? You look young, so they're probably in high school?
No, they're in college now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
They're all in college.
Okay. Yeah. You look after
Thank
yourself,
you.
clearly. Okay, but what's the advice for parents? What's the advice for parents who have kids in school?
It is definitely a
what would you tell
curveball.
them?
Curveball and then polarizing, right? It's first of all, I don't think that using AI is cheating, and there's a lot of using AI is cheating. So for your kids, you have to use the same concepts about proficiency, but proficiency for a student is different. A student needs to learn how to use the tools, not just to get away with a quick essay, but so they can actually learn in a better way. They can go deeper. They can, you can ask AI to, ask me questions about this, or help me to think differently about this problem, so I can actually find an answer. It's very tempting to just say, find me the answer. But if you work with your kids to make sure that they understand this is a powerful learning application, you're developing this AI native generation that is, I've been referring to the market of the future, that this is going to be the knowledge worker of the future. And all of you parents have the responsibility to make sure they do it ethically.
Amen, brother. Well done. You landed it.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time as always, Leo. I learn from you every time we talk, so I look forward to our next conversation.
The person you're trying to reach is not
Thank you.
available.
Thank you for having me.
At the tone,
Yep.
please record your message.
Thank you, Leo.
When you have finished recording, you may hang
note
up.
to end on. Folks, it is time for us once again, by popular request, to cede the stage to Taylor once more. I am curious which insights she'll share with us next. What is another barrier that might be impeding AI adoption at your organization? So Taylor, without further ado, it's all you.
Thanks, Maxwell. You're my hype woman. Okay, these are going to be fast. So quick reminder for anyone new who's joined, I lead product and advisory at Section. I'm sharing four of about 10 to 15 barriers or so that we see to ROI based on our work with hundreds of companies. And I'm focused today on the most common barriers that really stall ROI out right away. So I've introed the last two by saying they're not the sexiest, and this is no exception. This is probably the least sexy of all three, but we'll get a little more exciting at the end maybe. But it really is around governance. So our first was the company doesn't have a clear why of AI. Leo just talked about that, which is awesome. Our second is you haven't really achieved true access, and the third is really around governance and around your AI policy. I think most people think of their AI policy, if they're thinking of it, as solving a compliance problem, right? Making sure that employees are using AI safely. I think about it as it's also solving an adoption problem. It's helping employees feel more confident that they can actually use AI and experiment with it. So again, this is a pretty typical company that we work with. When we ask employees about their organization's AI governance policy, what we often see is about 75% of employees say, honestly, largely that they don't know. They have no idea. Some say there isn't one, but usually the biggest swath when we go in and start working with a company is they say, it is that I'm not sure bucket. And this is a really big problem because it impedes, again, adoption of the platforms that you're rolling out. And it impedes, as we'll see in a moment, the sophistication of the use of those platforms.
One moment while I try to connect this call.
I really think about the policy less as as solving a compliance problem. Of course it does that, that's a no-brainer, but also it has to be designed to solve this adoption problem. Across all our benchmarking, when we ask employees what limits their AI usage, this is the number one reason. The number one reason they cite, it's cited by over 2/3 of knowledge workers, is that they are concerned about data privacy or security. That's like a little crazy, right? If you think about it. When we ask people, again, what's limiting their use, it's more common for them to say they're worried about data security or privacy than concerns about the tool working, right? This is more common, a more common limitation cited than hallucinations. It's more common than their concerns about job loss. It's more common than not knowing how to use AI well or not knowing what to use AI for. Those are all real problems. But this is the one that when you ask employees what's limiting their use, this is the top concern. So no clear usage policy isn't just a compliance issue. It is actually an adoption issue, which is therefore an ROI issue, which we'll talk about in a moment. I just want to give you a little bit more of a sense. I feel like these kind of quotes help bring to life a bit more about what's happening in the employee's head, right? Like why they feel this way. So you have some employees just straight up saying they don't use AI because they don't know what the company policy is. And that's probably your kind of earliest, going to be what's happening in your earliest companies in terms of kind of where they're at on the AI maturity curve. You also have employees saying they use it sometimes, but less frequently than they would because they're concerned about privacy or security. And then you even have employees saying they use it for certain tasks, maybe basic tasks. And remember, Greg showed that slide very, very early on in our day, showing that about 90% of employees are still in that very basic use case kind of bucket. A lot of that is because they're nervous about using AI for a more sophisticated idea that they might have, because again, they don't have clarity from their company on what are the guardrails with which they should be using AI. By the way, in the vast majority of companies that we work with, that where again, if I go back to this slide, right, where you've had this big swath of I'm not sure, most of them have a policy. So it's not a problem that they haven't written something up. It's either a problem that the policy is too vague or it hasn't been kind of communicated to employees in a way that they will actually understand it. Because often, as we all know, these policies are vague, they're jargony, they were written by people who have now gone through, 10, 15 edits, and it's hard to understand how I actually should use this as, a standard marketer inside the organization looking for inspiration. So I want to just talk a bit for a second around why this is an issue, because I think there's sometimes this reaction, especially inside very large corporations, around, well, we get it, but it would be worse if everyone was using AI not safely than having them not use it at all. And I think that the reason that that's the wrong way to think about it is because AI right now is like a sandbox. To find real high value use cases, some of the ones that Leo was talking about, you need your employees to be playing with AI, to be experimenting with AI. It's a totally new technology, right, that behaves totally differently. And your employees are your subject matter experts on how your business works. They know how the process actually gets done, right? How the marketing team creates their deliverables and, runs their marketing tests. They're the subject matter experts on how your organization works. And you need your subject matter experts in a safe sandbox, right? Experimenting with how AI can improve their work first, and then therefore the business's work. But if they don't feel safe to do that, if they don't feel protected to do that, then as we can see on the previous kind of data I showed you, right, they won't. And so then your ROI is limited. So this is the impact. This is what we see in companies where there aren't very clear usage guidelines. We see a couple things. We see much less experimentation happening, or we hear a lot about siloed or even silent experimentation, right? People aren't talking about using AI. They might have found what they think is maybe a great use case, but they're nervous to share it because they know it requires uploading their marketing plan, and they're not totally sure if that's what's allowed. And I think Leo just referenced some of this as well. In these organizations that don't have a clear kind of guardrails for employees, we also see a much higher prevalence, I talked about this a little bit before, of those beginner level use cases versus your more advanced use cases. And I think worse, we also just see, again, it comes through a lot when we go in and talk to employees. The way they're talking about using AI is more like a secret. It's more like, there's a concern around fear around like, well, I don't want to get in trouble for using AI. So either I'm not going to talk about it, or worst case, I'm not, again, testing some of the ideas that I might have based on my own workflows and what I know my challenges are for how AI could help me. So again, you're significantly hampering experimentation by the exact people who are the experts on your business And everyone here on this call today is asking about like, where are the, the examples of where there's, $100,000 or $1 million kind of, ROI coming from AI. Those examples exist for sure. And a couple people have shared about them, and we'll get to a couple more, but they're coming actually from employees often, right? They're coming from the people in the organization who are doing this work. And so again, in the organizations we see where that's successful, they have a very clear, specific set of guardrails. So that's how I think about what the mandate is for AI leaders, right? You need to publish and be talking about it all the time. I love what Alicia was sharing around, like, right, she's talking about putting things on the video screens in your office and putting up flyers. Again, this is not, as I said earlier, like the super exciting stuff, but it is the stuff that works. You have to have a clear, simple, specific guardrails. They have to be easy to find for employees. They have to be specific, as I said, right? Don't upload sensitive information. That's not helpful enough, right? It has to be, I don't know what sensitive information is. We at least have to have some examples for employees. Otherwise, again, you're going to limit adoption. And lastly, I think one of the things that I've seen in a couple of organizations, and I think is just a really great way to think about it, is also sharing more of the why, right? And trusting the employee to understand and want to understand, right? Like, why are what are the scenarios in which I should be using an LLM or an AI platform, especially one that's an enterprise solution, right? Something that you've rolled out and kind of stamped as an approved platform, because there are, of course, situations where we want to use those sensitively, but it's just explaining the why, right? The technology is moving fast, new use cases are constantly emerging, and then you can help employees also make kind of informed decisions as well. So again, like many of these things we've talked about today, easier said than done, I think, but also, frankly, there are organizations that have done this well. They have moved fast, and I do think it's a lot easier than it was, a year ago when we had this conference, to be able to have just a clear, succinct policy that is hammered over the head to employees, so that, if anyone's saying to you, well, I'm just nervous about whether I can use AI safely, you can say, well, that's just not a valid reason to be concerned, because here are our guidelines and here are our guardrails. And so, this is how we want you to be using AI, and kind of go forth and start that experimentation. So my best advice here, as you build something like this out, write it through the lens of how to encourage adoption, not just guarantee compliance. All right, Maxwell.
All right, Taylor, thank you again. Lots of love in the chat. We can't wait for the next and final insight from you. But for now, you get to rest, and I get to welcome our next guest into the room. Mr. Porres, welcome, the AI adoption whisperer at Logitech. This session is going to be really great for those of you who are hungry for impressive adoption stats and the how behind those. Eric's gotten Logitech to 78%, close to 80% company-wide proficiency certification in just over
85%.
Okay.
I came with receipts, Maxwell. I came with receipts.
Look at the old dashboard. See, Eric's always one of folks. So incredible numbers, no matter what they are. Over 80% is exciting. Logitech rolled out an AI tool that we actually built, Prof AI, so I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But we also will touch on Eric's recipe for, how does this work? And the recipe is actually refreshingly simple. Make it easy for folks to access stuff. Reduce the number of clicks, right? Cancel redundant software contracts. Accelerate productivity using GPTs. Build AI habits, and that will compound over time. So Greg is back on this stage to facilitate a conversation with Eric to talk about how the Logitech team got there where they are today and what the ROI from that widespread adoption is. Whew, that was a mouthful. Eric, so good to have you. Greg, you're up.
Thank you, Maxwell. Eric, great to see you again.
Greg, likewise, and clearly we both got the hat memo on this part of the afternoon.
I heard you were bringing the hat, and so I had to respond. But yours is better. Yours says AI Champions. Mine's a new store in Soho called Saturday Soccer, and I'm just promoting them because I don't want them to go out of business. because they sell vintage soccer wear, and I don't think really many Americans could give a shit. So I'm just promoting them. I'll take it off now because I would love the store to stay in business. Great to see you again.
Likewise, Greg. Thank you for having me and for some great discussions today. I've learned, I've taken notes and
good. Well,
learned some stuff. So
we're gonna raise the bar with you and our final guests. Just to remind the audience, if they don't know you, you're the guy that went around and personally trained about 800 people on AI. I think about a year ago or maybe longer. Like, you're the guy that basically said, I want to lead this, or I want to be a catalyst for this change. And I think you sort of took it upon yourself to go and just really find those, I guess, early champions. Is that right?
Sure. So I don't want to call myself Gandhi, but it's Gandhi is attributed to saying, be the change you want to see in the world. And so AI is not new to Logitech. Certainly, it shows up in our hardware, it shows up in our software. But AI as a knowledge working construct for 6,000 people around the world is pretty new. And so my old experience on being an early AI guy back in the early teens in the MarTech land, where our founders, a couple of our founders at a company called Rocket Fuel were AI PhDs coming out of Stanford. I was CMO of that company. And so I got baptized in the promise and the potential of AI early, and it never left. And so then again, this is not a plug. They didn't invite me on just to say, oh, Section. However, when Section started their AI MBA course, mini MBA course at the end of 2003, it was, that sounds pretty interesting. So let me take that course, and then.
So you got through the application process somehow. We let you in.
Right. Somehow you let me in. Well, I paid to be in, but but in doing that, right, the capstone course in Section's mini MBA says, hey, okay, how do you want to apply the skills that you've just learned over 6 weeks of pretty intense, like hundreds, if not thousands of slides worth of content? And so from that, originally I was going to do, let me use Gen AI for product development. I was leading an innovation team within Logitech, but then it was literally like I slept on it. I said, no, that's stupid. I want to be this catalyst. I believe I can be this catalyst. I believe I have the skills to be the catalyst and the autonomy and the mastery to do so. So I took, and Greg will say, so you basically stole our stuff. No, I curated, of those 800 slides of information, I curated it down to about 50 that I thought were really relevant and important for our teams, based on what I knew from the 2.5 years I'd been at Logitech. At that point, 2 years, software company I was acquired by Logitech. So. And that then set it up. 824 people over the course of 8 months in different sessions.
And you went, hold sec, slow down. Yep. So you went and sat next to them at their desk or on Zoom or both? Like you were basically
take your pick, and anywhere I could. I had the autonomy to be able to say, look, I want to go into every place I possibly can. Everyone who's a hand raiser, and including people who are not hand raisers in terms of passively aggressive hand slappers, and say, look, this is coming, and you need to know that this is going to change. Look, I think
you kept your day job though, like you were doing this on the side.
Yep, kept the day job. This was my side hustle. My full-time side hustle within Logitech was to do this. And then, Greg, to your point, then it became more apparent, going from 2024 into 2025. Look, we at Logitech, and I think this is one of the tips that I would put out there, is that if you don't have, now again, does this sound self-effacing? I don't know. If you don't have a head of AI, you need one. And the reason I think you need one now, at least over the next couple of years, is that right now, AI tends to be highly distributed amongst many people. Well, it's an analytics issue, or in the case of Moderna, it's Bryce, and plus it's someone who comes out of HR, and in these other companies, it's in all sorts of different places. The problem with that is that you wind up having 100 people with 1% of influence in terms of being able to make change, affect change, connect the dots between different organizations. And so it's super important to say, okay, you know what? It's time to get serious. If you're serious about AI, then you need to fund it. And you don't just fund it with seats for OpenAI. You don't just fund it with seats in Gemini. You fund it with at least one person
doing heavy QA on
can,
integrations,
you give that kind of autonomy to if they built up the credibility to do that. It's a two-way street there.
Which worked for you because you became the head of AI for Logitech. You're now the VP of Global AI. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. So yeah, and again, like what might it's different strokes. What might be right for some may not be right for all. But in my case, I could make that claim, and I had the credibility to back it. I built a software company. I've been an entrepreneur. I've been in MarTech. I've been on the services side of the business. So I had the right alchemy, if you will, in terms of being able to have the right persona to be an active educator. I have 4 kids, so I've been an educator as well, both for them. As well as others.
Yeah, well, just in the spirit of full disclosure, Eric, most agents get 5% of annual compensation, so I'll be calling you. But let's talk about one of the first things you did, which I think was brilliant. Taylor talked about access, easy access to tools, to AI tools specifically, and you did something in terms of reducing the number of clicks inside of Logitech for your workforce to get access to their AI. Just tell us what you did and what that change was.
No, it's an important change, which is you either have to meet people where they are, or they will find the easiest path forward to do what they want to get done on their own. And so, prior to my arrival in this role, we did have our own wrapper, and I'd call it a V1 wrapper that was engineering driven, not a lot of UI, UX associated with it, to give people access to a limited model garden. But it required, when I did my first audit, I'm like, guys and girls, it's 11 clicks. It's 11 clicks to get there. And because you have to sign on to VPN, and then you have to remember username and password, and then you have to go through Okta, and then you have to go through this. And like when you actually break it down, it's 11 clicks. And I said, no, this has to be one click simple, because if it isn't one click simple, like what have we learned across consumer experience, right? If it's not one click simple, people are going to go somewhere else. And so what you don't want, of course, is you don't want to have shadow AI creep up to bite you in the ass, because somebody winds up putting some highly confidential, sensitive product material or something that they really shouldn't be in a system that's outside the secure and protected garden that we have. So that was number one. Number one was let's go from 11 clicks to 1, and it made a huge difference. And I could talk about some of the other differences as well in terms of user experience. I would say, Greg, that also for those who are doing this, we have, so we're a G Suite company. So we have Gemini as a core part of what we have, but we also have what we now call LogiQ, and LogiQ is our experience for people to, if they want to, have these private and secure experiences between GPT, AWS, Gemini, other models, but also the interface I control. Not just me, it's a small team of people that control it. And so I can take the best of breed of capabilities from, it's not just Claude, it's not just ChatGPT, it's not just Gemini, it could be Sim Theory, it could be AI Box, it could be other companies that are out there that are doing really interesting user experience driven experiences to work with AI that we can bring into the fold. So one example of that, the idea of styles with Claude as an example. Okay, well, let's create a Logitech branded or a Logitech brand voice as a style. So if you're working with AI, you're a marketing person and a professional, guess what? You can both have the custom instructions that you're used to from a ChatGPT experience, and you can have the style that you're used to from a Claude experience, and you can actually do that, which then gives you the ability to reduce your operating expenses when it comes to other software, unnamed software that is no longer, that is now contractually ended at Logitech, that would otherwise give you the ability to do brand voice content and copy creation as one example.
So I want to go back to that one in a minute, which is how you pay for some of this. And I know you have a strong belief around being able to cancel or not renew other software contracts to pay for AI. But I want to first talk about this idea of offering multiple models. 2 questions, Eric.
Sure.
One is, do you care which model the employee uses? Assuming they're all in the walled garden, are you trying to direct it to most of the traffic and usage to one, or is your point of view is, we're going to pay for all these and make them available? We kind of don't care as long as employees get value, they can use whatever they want inside the walled garden?
Yeah, so I care from the perspective of how I look at AI adoption in general. I look at it through these 6 lenses, and you and I talked about this about a month ago, which is consistency, intensity, creation, impact, breadth, and whether somebody has a Prof AI certification or not.
Okay, hold on a sec. Yep. Maxwell, you there? We got to capture those 6. Someone's got to say them again, and someone write them in chat, please. Do them again real quick.
Say them in slow.
Do it again.
Consistency, which is the days with at least one AI session across, whether it be Gemini, LogiQ, take your pick. So habits beat heroics. Intensity is the amount of work that's pushed through AI. So that's on a conversation, message, and interaction basis. And so one of the bellwether metrics I look at in terms of AI adoption is number of messages per conversation, because I know that when I started in January, that number was at about 2.97. And so many people within the organization still thought of AI as like Google, or rather Google has trained all of us, and before that, Lycos, Alta Vista, others, to treat a search box as a search. You ask a question, you get an answer. It's not Answer GPT, it's Chat GPT. So the more conversations you have, the more iteratively you can work with AI, the better outputs you're going to have. So that's intensity. Creation. Greg, this is something that you talk about a lot, which has been talked about here as well, which is this notion of being able to create assistants or gems, if you're in the Gemini world, assistant, agent, somewhat interoperable language, but not just for you. So how do I create, right? Like I look at a custom GPT or an assistant as it's almost like a SAS of 1. Fantastic. Bravo. You built something that was helpful for you. Now, think a little bit broader and say, okay, how do I make this impact, which is the impact piece? So there's creation, right? Creating an assistant is one thing. Impact is, will other people, have I created enough value for myself that I can share this with other people? During this session today, and during one of the sort of micro breaks with Taylor's session, I created a gem, which was a prompt builder, because we had already had a LogiQ assistant that I had trained to help people create better prompts. And now the gems are shareable. That's something that became available in Gemini as of last week. Okay, let's apply that same knowledge so that wherever people are in terms of the surface area of AI, they have great resources available to them to make their use of it even better. So we talked about creation, we talked about impact. Breadth is another one. So breadth, which is to say, okay, how do I transfer across context? So whether that means in the case of Google, Docs, Sheets, Notebook, Google Videos, Gemini, active Gemini use in terms of the native application itself, because I think as many people know, or maybe many people actually don't know this, when you work with Gemini within the Google applications, you're getting a watered down version of Gemini. And so you may you're like, oh, I just hit the little button and that's my Gemini experience. Well, no, the actual native Gemini experience is much closer to ChatGPT thinking or Claude. And so that's the breadth. And then Prof AI, we talked about this too last time, Archilocus, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. I will take anybody who falls to the level of training, and now it's 85% of people across the world, 46 countries, 142 cities. I will gladly have an experience of a workforce that is role, context, task, output, boundaries, and reasoning trained over those who are not. So hopefully that answers the question, Greg, because I think that the point is thinking versus reasoning. I do look at over time, are people starting to use reasoning models more? Because that to me then also signals not just that depth of conversation, but it also considers the complexity of the ask, especially that given that we have deep research available to us through Gemini and through some other API means. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does, and thank you, Sander, for capturing that in chat. I'm sure others did as well. But now here's the tough question, Eric. Aren't you just making it harder for two things to happen? One, the training and upskilling, because you're offering all these different models. Mm-hmm. And the second is, doesn't it all this make it harder for you to capture all those analytics? Because now you're looking for that data across these different platforms in terms of their dashboards. You know what I mean? So is the complexity of the additional models that you offer employees worth the cost?
Well, for me, yes, the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze. I definitely consider myself a bit of as a human being, a little bit of a polymath, and so in that way, like I would rather have I would rather have, I love to cook. I would rather have more ingredients to start from than fewer ingredients to start from, such that I can curate the experience for one set of people versus another. And so there are folks, for instance, like I know, for instance, right now, about 87% of people use Gemini on a monthly basis. 53% use Logic Q. About 45% use both. So there are different reasons and different use cases in which people will work in one system or another. That's okay. But we need to make sure that everybody has a general understanding of what the surface area is in terms of what the potential is, because what you will learn in one place, you may be able to apply somewhere else. And I think that's the other critical learning here, is that you can never stop learning. I think it was Jeremy Utley who said this a few months ago in one of his podcasts. Use inspires use cases. And so the more things I can throw at you, quite literally, the more ingredients I can give you, well, I have to start playing with the ingredients. And not every ingredient is going to work out to be a hot meal, but certainly the more ingredients I have, the more potential energy I put into a system, which turns into kinetic energy. And to your point, Greg, in terms of am I worried about the instrumentation around who's using what or where and how people are using it or not using it? That's pretty trivial. I mean, it's simple but not easy.
Right.
But it's absolutely worth it, because then what I can do, Greg, is I can look for pockets of either excellence or pockets where I need support. And so for the 115 or so champions that I have around the world, there are some champions who are really, really good at Gemini, who are really, really good at using Logic Q, who are really, really good at creating assistants or writing instructions for assistants. So that's where I want to transfer that knowledge and bring that knowledge to those who need it. So right now we have, and you asked this question earlier today too of several panelists. I have a champions group it's a volunteer organization, like volunteer firefighters. And every quarter I will ask, it's a volunteer commitment. I will ask people, hey, look, is this really what you signed up for? And is it too much? And it's okay if you bow out. But right now I have people in every major region of the world, as well as in every function, so that there is, at least from a leadership team level, there's at least one person who is an AI champion within their function, and also on a regional basis. So we're not losing anybody, whether they work in Lausanne or Silicon Valley, or in my case, in the Bronx.
Yep. Eric, Leo made a great point about managers who I think are often overlooked, undertrained, or underprepared for change management.
Yep.
What's your take, and what have you done to support managers and or to help them understand what is the level of AI fluency or proficiency inside their team?
So fluency and proficiency is the easy one, is to, and you know that I did this, because in the case of Prof AI certification, it's not a mandate. So nobody has said this is a required like compliance training or like health and safety training. No one said you're absolutely required to do this. It's just a really good idea if you do. And now here we are 125 days later, 125 business days later, and now we're at 85% of people certified. But what I did is
not that you're counting or anything. Anyway,
not that metrics matter, but they do.
Right.
And so, but what I did is I built an application using Gemini, using Google Apps Scripts, to say, okay, let's connect the dots between Prof AI certification and our Workday export that looks at every person who rolls up to everybody else. And so when I look out on a manager basis, and what I do, and what I was able to do, Greg, was to federate that knowledge across the leadership team every week, starting at the end of April, whether you loved it or hate it, and it was just data, it was not opinion, it was just data. Here are the top performers at a leadership team level. Here are the bottom performers at a leadership team level. And performance is, look, people have started, but they've stalled. Why have they stalled? So there are some instances where, and so this is a great example, Greg, of working in partnership with people to uncover these truths, where there are teams, there are engineers who build. I am currently speaking to you with an amazing audio DSP that is created as a function of this microphone that I use from Logitech, this 4K camera that I use from Logitech. Regardless of the fact that those teams are more than proficient, right? You could consider them AI fluent, if not native. They still went through the training. Why? because then they would have a common, like, I understand you. I understand where you're coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. So if someone who is a traditional knowledge worker, who is not a traditional developer of machine learning models for image optimization, we can have a similar conversation about role, context, task, output, boundaries, reasoning, because that applies to everything. It doesn't just apply to generative AI and prompt creation. It applies to everything that you do. Boundaries and reasoning is just super important thing when thinking about model development, what Ed was saying before about reinforcement learning or training. On and
so
on.
You think, so hold on a second, I want to highlight this. I have not heard this before. You think that sort of training for prompting, maybe we call it context engineering now, that framework is just a good critical thinking framework and can be thought of more than just a way to interact with AI, but a common sort of framework or language just across the org to have productive conversations.
100%. It's systems thinking. It is absolutely systems thinking. And look, if you can't explain yourself to AI, and you can't have AI, and you can't work iteratively with an AI partner, how are you going to work iteratively with a human being,
right.
Or not?
Right.
In the realm of innovation, in the realm of the Schumpeter creative destruction, right? Like we are creatively destroying ourselves right now to rebuild a better company, a better foundation, and a better thing for what we do. Which I know is what you're going to get to, because we only have a few minutes left. About like, all right, so show me the money, show me the receipts.
Okay, don't do my job. Okay, I can do it. But you're right. We're about to talk about that, which is ROI and how do we pay for all this? What are we building? So talk quickly about canceling software contracts. That's a layup for you.
Sure.
And then I want to talk about productivity.
Yep.
And what the hell that really means, and how that gets converted into something that a CFO might actually sign off on.
CFO worthy, sure. So look, there's no surprise, right? ROI comes up in every boardroom, and I think the temptation right now is to chase demos. So everybody is thrown, AI is to software as gourmet is to deli. But what we've learned is that ROI really comes in these three different currencies, which is time, money, and momentum. So what does that mean? So right, what are these ROI archetypes? One, there's the efficiency play, where AI eliminates drudgery, right? So, and I went through so we have both an intake form in terms of people that want to start AI projects that are not already covered, and we also have an outtake form. And so the outtake form is like, all right, show me the money, show me what you did. So in one example, there was one project that cut manual review time by 90% that saves teams hours each week. There's a SQL validator assistant that somebody created that reduced validation time by 90%, saving 9 hours a week. An ops assistant saves a team 250 hours per week across teams. So like AI, and in that sense, Greg, AI pays for itself when it takes a day's worth of work and makes it like a coffee break task. So that's the efficiency play.
Now, hold sec. I just want to highlight that for everybody. No previous guest mentioned outtake form. I kept asking everybody, how do you prove ROI? Everybody talked about intake forms and standardizing or having a template for, recommending or requesting a project. No one, not that I heard, suggests what Eric just says he does. So I think that's gold. Right? Outtake
and you know
form.
what, Greg?
We got to measure after.
It's important, and it's hard to do. Like when I introduced the outtake form 3 months ago, so some of it was playing catch up in terms of some projects that were already there, and it was a really important forcing function to say, hey, like, what are we actually building here? Does this actually matter? And look, not every project is going to be super successful. Some of it's going to feel like a little vibey, but that's okay, because not every project is supposed to be successful. Like if you're not at least it's not move fast and break things, but if you're not breaking something, you're not forcing the change that you want to see in the organization. So I will happily, Greg, next week, if you want guest posts, like what does the outtake form look like? It's rolled all the way up to company strategy. So we have a one-page company strategy summary, and so everyone has to evaluate their AI project, not only in terms of time saved, dollars saved, whatever it is, but does it actually align with company strategy across one or more levers? So that's number one.
Yeah, we want it. I love it. I love that idea. So
one is efficiency.
Yeah.
One is quality. So where does AI can raise accuracy and consistency? So for instance, compliance teams using AI to flag errors that humans used to miss. So that's using computer vision AI to be able to do that. So there's an illegal assistant saved each lawyer about 5 hours per month. There's a DBA assistant that reduces query times by 85%. So it's the ROI of fewer mistakes. That is a quantifiable value. Yep. And then the third one, Greg, so we talked about efficiency, we talked about quality, and now I want to talk about revenue. So where does AI reveal hidden value? So there's one example where we were giving one project was giving sales visibility into pipeline dollars that they couldn't see before. And so this pipeline insight tool improved visibility into deal value with business teams capturing insights of about so that was not only 40 hours of time saved each week, but also millions of dollars in potentially unrealized revenue. So like it doesn't just save time; it can find money that was already on the table. So productivity gains, bottom line contribution, and strategic alignment. That's a really, really important one. Like if you can have a cool project, that's okay. We have a handful of cool projects. But a cool project, to your point, is not going to get the attention of the CFO in a way that alignment with the core principles, core operating principles of the company will.
So what I'm hearing from you, and I heard it from Leo as well, and Ritu, what I'm hearing is the ROIs here. It's obvious. It's going to take a while, and we just need to be a little more patient. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Like this will, you have these anecdotes, you have these case studies, so that the data is starting to surface. It just takes a while, and we need to be a little more patient. Is that what's going on right now? And all this talk about AI, there's no ROI in AI, is just at this moment in time.
Greg, don't bring up the MIT study. Instead, like what I would do is I would bring up what I shared earlier in the chat, the Oliver Wyman study as an example, as well as others, which is to say that you're absolutely right that it does take time. Change doesn't happen overnight. Many of the pilots that we run, we do try and time box them in some way, shape, or form. 100 days, 130 days, 150 days. But the other thing I would recommend in terms of whoever is left in this, this audience cohort here is like, you have to build it first once yourself. Because if you're going to offload, you think you're going to offload your decision debt to some third party. And that's like, we always used to say, right, you can't fire yourself. That's why you hire consultants. The same thing applies. And like AI, as we know, and we talked about this before, it is we're about to write a whole new blog on it, the truth serum. The truth serum for every organization is just that. AI will expose decision and thinking debt that you either tried to hide or you didn't think you had. But sure enough, boom, it's there. Because just like humans are probabilistic, so is AI. And so we've been going through these deterministic snafus for years, trying to invent solutions to problems that fundamentally are probabilistic. So yes, have a little patience. Number one. Number two, invest in a head of AI or someone in that role who can literally spend 100% of their time thinking about this. It's not a 50% job. It's not a 40% job. It has to be a 100% job. Number two, and then number three, in terms of the dimensions of ROI. Productivity gains, bottom line contribution, strategic alignment is also super important because strategic alignment is what gets the board excited, it gets CEO excited, it gets leadership excited, and it gets the CFO excited, who ultimately either has to pay the bills or not on some of these experiments.
All right, one last piece of advice, Eric, for the audience, for people about to start their journey, the journey you've been on for over a year. One last piece of advice. Whatever you want. It could be personal, it could be organizational, could be personal.
Sure. Well, so organizationally, so I'm staring at you from my main screen. Greg, you did this last summer. My second screen over here is my AI screen. I have LogiQ, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, Notebook, and Perplexity, and Consensus, and I have this.
Stop bragging.
No, okay. But these are literally the tabs that I have open all the time. And I attribute that to you because it was otherwise a sort of tabular experience that was pretty weird. So that's number one. And then number two, the advice I always give, it's the number one advice I give. It's everything that I do in training. Before you commit to something with AI, ask AI to be an actual thinking partner with you. to help you improve your thinking about what it is you're about to ask it for. You can always have a second conversation. You actually do get a second chance to make a first impression by having a conversation, iterative conversation with your thought partner.
Love it. Eric, I always learn talking with you, so I appreciate it. Great to see you. Hopefully I'll see you in person next time I'm in New York, or maybe we can get you out to the Bay Area for one of our events out there. Great to see you.
Love to do it. And thank you, Greg, and thank you, Maxwell, as well, for it's been a great session, great set of sessions for today.
Thank you.
Couldn't agree more. The energy has been palpable in each and every one. Clearly, both of y'all's afternoon coffees kicked in. What a ride. So let's actually take a 180 in terms of topic. And I'll introduce our next guest, who I hear came dressed to impress. Let's see if that's actually true when he comes on camera. Moderna's Bryce Chalamel bringing his provocative take, that take being stop measuring AI ROI. Yes, you heard that right. Yes, you are dressed to impress, Bryce. I see that now. At Moderna, Bryce argues AI is like the internet, so a foundational technology whose value will just compound exponentially over time, and you cannot really measure it. That's one of the things we'll talk about. We'll talk about how traditional metrics miss the point entirely often and could actually limit your ROI potential. Bryce's challenge to leaders, I would say, would be to treat AI as a strategic piece of infrastructure, not a line item. So let's hear more on that and more about why that is his take. So welcome, Bryce, and Greg's with us on stage to host this conversation again.
Thanks, Maxwell. Welcome, Bryce.
Hello, Greg. So nice to be with you again.
Likewise. I'm not going to let you talk about that yet, though. Meaning, because you're basically invalidated the whole purpose of the conference, which is ROI. So, but we'll get there in terms of your point of view on ROI, obviously. But what I do want to start with, Bryce, just to bring everybody up to speed, is let's spend 5 minutes or so talking about your journey at Moderna. And you were gracious to spend a couple hours with me in person. And this is all information you've been very public with, the company has, in terms of this AI journey. So if you could just sort of refresh us for those who have been following, and maybe we've read the HBR, HBS business case rather, but refresh us all about this journey that you've been on and where you're at today, please.
Of course. So first, at Moderna, we think of AI as a utility, so as something that everyone is going to need and use all the time. It's more a matter of when and how than if. And so from that consideration, when GPT-4 was launched, and it was an API at the time, there was no such thing as ChatGPT, we built in a couple of days a client for it. We met with OpenAI and agreed on a zero data retention policy and enforcement. So our data was not retained through the inferences with the model, and we gave it to 8,000 people, right? So that took about a couple of weeks. From there, we asked them, what is this useful for? Right? Even though we had our own ideas, but we cannot be in their minds, and we're not mind readers, and we cannot have their expertise, their background, their intelligence to understand all the use case of such a universal technology. Out of this, we thought we would have 20 or 30 answers, but we got more than 300. And these answers were made on a forum, which we created for the occasion, that is still alive today. It's called Go AI, because we have Go links. You type in your URL go/AI, you get there. And this forum has 3,000 active members. Remember, we're a 5,000 people company. So every week, 3,000 people go there, ask questions, post ideas, share challenges. So this was the birth of the forum. And the winners would be the ones the most upvoted by their peers. Why? Because we expect two things out of them. The first is that they get fantastic ideas on what to do with AI. And the second is that people love them. That's how you define your first cohort of champions. You're good, you're loved, you're my champion. And they came from all over the company. Out of this, we categorized all those propositions way more than we thought. So we needed AI for AI. And one of my first use cases of MChat, which was our client originally for GPT-4, was to categorize all the use cases that people had found. And we found eventually that we had 4 big categories. People thought to use it as an assistant to automate simple tasks, daily tasks. People thought to use it as an expert, to have expert conversations, either on their own field or on the field of someone adjacent to them that they don't know well enough, but they don't dare ask questions. The third is they thought AI would be a great coach to learn something, to engage with the growth mindset, to expand on zones that might be uncomfortable and to experience new skills, new domains, new languages, and the fourth is AI as a creative partner. One of the very famous ideas that was proposed in this initial contest in 2023 was called the Beard Man, and it's the story of someone who has a big beard but has to work in a clean room. And then what does it take to work in a clean room when you have a big beard? And they made a song out of this. Then they put chords on this, then it became an actual real song, and then everyone was singing it in the corridors, and we knew that AI was onto something. So, and a great way, by the way, to share something that is very important, which is hygiene in our clean rooms.
Right.
Now we'll fast forward. 9 months later, the client of OpenAI had leapfrogged us. It was able to do tool use with Python scripts, web browsing, a number of things which our client was not able to do. And so
you mean chat, just for the audience, you mean ChatGPT?
I mean ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So we were one of the first clients of ChatGPT Enterprise. And then again, instead of opening it to 10 or 20 people, we opened it to the whole cohort of our full-time employees. And why? Because if this is a utility, why would you deprive anyone of it? And not to mention, let's say we're talking mobile phones or the internet, and you give it to 5 or 10 or 20 people. How valuable is it to them if they can't call anyone with it? So same thing here. How valuable is AI, let's say, to a researcher, if legal is not using it and setting the guidelines, if finance is not using it and setting the budgets, if HR is not using it and ready to recognize them for their effort with AI? So the forest creates the trees. If you're launching a pilot without having the full ecosystem enabled, understanding, and powered by AI, you're going to meet some adversity all along the way because the ecosystem is going to fight against it. You're going to have a graft rejection. So we didn't want that to happen. We signed for way more licenses than we had users at the time. And then we ran to enable adoption, enable proficiency around it.
So hold sec. So this idea of starting a pilot, let's say in marketing and not sales or finance and HR, you think that's fundamentally flawed as a strategy just because those people work with colleagues that are outside of, let's say, marketing, and you right away set up some sort of tension or second-class citizen, or just your point of view is everybody should get it.
That's exactly right. And I would more call it cruel than flawed. It's like, why would you do this to your salespeople? Like, what have they done to deserve this? That the marketing has AI and they don't, and they have to, do their own custom N of one messaging to 3,000, customers. Like, how?
Right.
So, and of course, this is a perfect example. Marketing creates a campaign. Our account manager has, let's say, 300,000 outlets that can distribute a product. They need to send individualized messages to each of those outlets from the campaign. If your marketing is enabled and empowered, but your sales are not, then your chain is going to break at the weakest link, and the weakest link will be sales. So this is true also of the internet. Like, why would you give the internet to your marketing and not to your sales? Like, what are they supposed to do? Send a horse, and we could go back to electricity. So it's then again, the principle is this is a universal technology. Everyone's going to use it every day, and we need to equip everyone with it. Now, with that being said, we didn't have 100% adoption from day one. We had to explain, create awareness, create desire, showcase champions and their use cases, let people speak to their peers about what they could do with it, because there's always someone in every team that's going to fly with AI. Take that person and let them invite the rest in their culture. Right? You can't teach culture, but you can invite in culture. Let the champions invite the rest of the teams in their culture. And this is how we ended up with like 85% adoption, and it was in December 24. So almost a year ago, and we're kind of plateaued at 85% adoption. It's a bit frustrating. So what we did, we organized the year-end evaluation and reward process with AI. So we deconstructed the 12 components of it, created 12 AI agents.
For the performance review process, right? Yeah, for employee performance reviews. Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
This simple thing, in a normal company, people only have two things in common: a laptop and a paycheck. And one of them matters more, is the paycheck. So you have to go for what matters the most, right? And interestingly, no one dared being calibrated with their peers without AI when they all have AI. So it was kind of a chicken dare game. And in the end, we jumped immediately in 1 week from 85 to 100% adoption, period. That was done. We've never gone back from there because, of course, once you use it, once you see the benefit, once you have an actual really concrete use case, which is to get a promotion or put your best foot forward in the evaluation process, you're not going to forget that experience easily.
So you were unhappy with 85% adoption, which, by the way, I think is very rare. We can talk about that later. And so now you're at 100. Okay, so
100% of people who have access to a laptop or mobile phone, because we have people who are in clean rooms, don't have access to digital devices.
Sure.
So I mean the knowledge workers, right? To be clear.
Yeah, no, I get it. And is that like monthly usage? Do you care? Is it monthly, weekly, daily? Like, how do you think about that metric?
That's a great topic, because really when you want to think of it, there are 5 steps in this process. The first one is access, and we talked about it. Give access to everyone. The second one is adoption. We just discussed about it. Like, are people going to adopt it or not? And how often are they going to use it? The third one, which is very tied to how often are they going to use it, is proficiency. How good are they at using it? The fourth is ways of working. Do they start their day opening their inbox, or do they start their day opening ChatGPT, connected to Outlook, and asking what's in their inbox, and getting a summary of the intelligent surface of all their inbox? And you can see here, we can talk more about this, but like anyone, and don't laugh, Greg, because I know you don't, but there are people who do. Anyone who still opens their inbox and reads their emails one by one is doing things in a way that I cannot comprehend. It reminds me of those managers who printed the emails and wrote them on paper and pencil, and then sent them back to the assistant for her to type them, right? So, like, why would you do this to yourself? Like, we don't live in an age where you can just go through your inbox and be happy with it. Use a connector to Gmail if you're a Gemini Gmail user, to ChatGPT or to Copilot if you're an Outlook user, and ask, what is the priority? What are the emails that should answer urgently? Can you please draft this for me? Can you do this by tomorrow 7 a.m. so that when I wake up, you have pre-drafted all my answers from all of the emails that landed there during the night, right? So ways of working, right? I'm not going to overdo this, but like this simple example should give you the gist of it. And then organization, because we need to reorganize for AI. AI, for one thing, dilutes silos of expertise. So let's say we have at Moderna clinical trials. Normally, those go to clinical development teams who think about the molecule, but also to technical development, who thinks about industry and how we're going to make the medication. That this is a historical legacy of 2 different expertise sets. But the truth is, we need to be as fast as possible to go from one step to the next step of our clinical trials. So when the time comes that we have the right platforms to support the people to make faster, better, and safer decisions, we might need to rethink how we divide and orchestrate the work. Will it be by domains of competency, or will it be by domains of decision based on universal competency, right? So there you have it. Access, adoption, proficiency, ways of working, reorganization for AI. This is the journey.
Love it. Someone asked in chat what the 5 were, and you just answered. And thank you, Shushma, for putting in chat what those 5 were. I want to spend a little more time on the last one, because for me, Bryce, it's the most exciting. I describe it as AI will enable us, and I think about it at the individual level. I think this is also true, as you just described, for teams and then for companies, organizations, that we can jump our capability boundaries. We are bound by capabilities, right? We have a certain set of skills and capabilities, and I love this idea that for us as individuals, as humans, we can jump previous, we've had these constraints or boundaries in terms of our capabilities, and we can jump past them or jump out of them into different roles, into different economic opportunity, hopefully, into new projects and so on.
Yeah, and this is such a great statement, Greg, because you remember my 4 examples of personas from the very first prompt contest in 2023, right? If you think of this, they are not all made equal. Some of them offload things and some of them unload things. So the assistant offloads repetitive tasks. We heard Eric talk about 80% reduction in task-based time, which is typical kind of thing. We also see that everyone on this call probably seeing too. That offloads. We talked about the expert. To some degree, the expert offloads complexity, right? Helps you do things that you couldn't do before, so you start to unload a little bit, but also offloads long, complicated conversations that maybe you don't even know who to ask questions to, or they don't have the time for you. The coach, maybe it offloads a little bit, but like, let's take this simple example. You take a meeting transcript. and you ask, how did I come through in this meeting based on the transcript? Who might have been upset by my remarks? Who might have been insensitive to? Did I cut anyone off when they were speaking? How could I have shown better presence? What is the next and best version of me in a meeting like this? What do you advise for me to do in the next meeting, and how should I show up in the next meeting? There, you're not using the meeting minutes for just the bullet points about tasks and efficiency and so on. You're using it as a source of real-world evidence for growth. So this onboards something. Suddenly, you're a better person. And the coach doesn't hallucinate. There's no such thing as a coach hallucinating. It guides you from the data you give it, and then you have a reflection, a soul searching, and the coach doesn't judge you. It's not judgmental. If anything, it most often praises you, so you have a little bit of pep to the wrong side. So if you want like hard coaching, you should ask something to the effect of, give me a searing critique of my presence in this meeting and remediation for each of the very bad points, and then you have no ego and you can read it. Yeah. But and then we come to the creative partner. This is a pure onboarding topic, right? Like it's going to onboard you into having 10 ideas instead of one, into thinking of a different marketing campaign than the one you thought, because you're discussing with the AI and bouncing off ideas, yes, handing each other and humans in the construct also. And you land into what I would call a transitional system of intelligence, right? That both offloads things and offers new things. And why this is important.
I love this. I love this idea. I want to capture this in chat too, Maxwell. Onboard and offboard. We started the morning, Bryce, with this very simple framework that we use, cut and create, that AI can help us cut workflows and tasks, and offload is what you would say. And I call it create, which is create new revenue streams, create new products, create new services, create new ways of working. And I love this idea. It's the idea of onloading, right? That it's not just one, it's not just the offload, it's the onload or the growth, as you said.
The transition, because in the end, Greg, what we need to think about is work. So companies have a mission statement. They have a reason to be here. In my mind and in my heart, every company is a greater good company, or almost, like has a purpose and a mission on Earth that is vital to the continuation of our humanity. In that mission, we need work. We need people to work for the achievement of the mission. Mm-hmm. Now, there might be AIs that support some of the work. There will be humans who do some of the work for as long as we can see. Like AI is not going to put us out of a job, by the way. I'm going to state the obvious. But if anything, people who are flying with AI have more work than ever, because now they have 10 ideas instead of one. So, and there will always be problems for them to solve. Like, sadly, I have to say, I am going to leave to my children a world that still has problems to solve. Right. And so the fact that we are thinking at the surface of work, and that we understand that the surface of work will be ecosystems of intelligence. I'll take an example. We have manufacturing at Moderna, and the factory cannot stop. Right? We are on time to produce and to deliver medicines to people who need them for their lives. So if something goes wrong, there's a monitoring system, there's an alert, there's a pager duty, and then someone who wakes up at night and has to fix it. It is not unthinkable that in the near future, agent orchestration platforms monitor all the signals and send the message to the pager for the person to wake up and go to the factory. So now there's an AI somehow managing a human. And that's fine, that's okay. It actually might be safer and better, right? And so we need to anticipate the layers of humans and AIs, not only in the way that they are hybrid and that they work together, but also the way that they manage each other, and that the way that this ecosystem thrives, and that our mission is delivered, right? And this is why the transitional nature is important, because a role is never more than a bundle of skills and tasks. And the roles are going to be there, but the skills and tasks are going to evolve dramatically. Right, the dynamic of the skills and tasks is very, very fast at the moment. Things that people did 5 years ago, they will not do next year. Things that they are starting to do, no one has done before. Mm-hmm. But the role is there. So when I hear, for instance, people saying, "Oh, maybe we should stop hiring junior people because everything they do is done by AI," right. I don't understand it, because this means that you are misunderstanding the person for the role, and you use to assign to that role tasks that are no longer needed, and you're failing as a manager to upgrade the role to the level that it could deliver today. And the people who are joining you, they know how to do this, because this is how they studied. And so you understand my principle here, like the role is an encapsulation of tasks and of skills that match each other. And this encapsulation is going to evolve dramatically. And that's why you want to hire junior people, because they are very, very powerful and skilled at the kind of tasks that you need them to do. And those are being invented right now.
So, but why then, Bryce, are all at least half the pundits, if not more, are predicting significant, massive job loss. Even Dario, right, CEO of a leading independent AI company, keeps coming out and making these predictions of 20, 30, 40% of roles will be eliminated, and we should be ready for UBI or some other ways to.
We need to stop asking tech geniuses to give their opinion on the future of society.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Like this is simply not their domain of expertise. So I will say this. Every stage of automation in the past has led to a change in jobs and tasks within full employment for our society. Every and each one of them. At every stage, there was someone who was a pundit and who said this was the end of the world. And we can go back as far as we want, like writing with Socrates and Phaedrus saying that writing was the end of the world, all the way now to AI, and I won't name any names because they're still alive and they might be angry at me. But I want to say this, is that no, like I don't believe at all that we're going to be in massive unemployment in our society. It's just that they understand the things that are about to disappear, and they are not able to dream the things that are about to appear. And the gap between both is killing them, right? Like it's killing their thought process. So certainly some tasks and some roles are going to go away, right? I want to say that, for instance, it is not impossible that people who today drive Ubers find it more difficult in the same numbers tomorrow as we have robo-taxis and Waymo cars and things like this. Like, this is possible. But then they are going to do something else. Maybe they become a vibe coder. Maybe they code with vibe coding 100 apps a week, and maybe they sell them for $50 instead of $1 million. And maybe this is the future of our society. So, and I would have dozens and dozens of those examples, right? We did this workshop with the executive assistants, and they were working with connectors and asking, can we use connectors to reorganize the agenda of our leaders and managers? Sadly, for now, no. But you can use the connectors to get information from the calendars and the emails of your leaders. So one of them asked me, could I do a deep research and deep research all the ways that my leader has prepared with journalists for interviews and the way that these interviews were perceived in the outer world and social media platforms and so on, and do an analysis of what is the best type of journalism preparation for the best outcome. I had a moment of pause because, like, and I was like, yeah, let's try this, because deep research has web search and it has SharePoint, Outlook, Teams, emails, everything. Within 20 minutes, we were all like marveling at what we were finding. And I witnessed an executive assistant become a campaign manager for their leader. And really the beginning of a chief of staff. Right. And you see what I'm saying, right? Like, certainly the role is there, but the skills and tasks there in the span of 20 minutes evolve dramatically. But that person is not out of a job, because the leaders, they need campaign managers and they need chiefs of staff, right? And now the elevation, you see the transition, right? Like the elevation of the role is so interesting, by the way, also so rewarding for that person. And she came up with the idea. This is why I keep telling you, you need to ask your people to teach you AI, not the other way around. Because I can't teach this to someone. Like, I don't know their role and their why, their mission statement personally, as well as they do, right? So it could only come from her.
All right, so now you're telling me that I was wrong. Let me explain. One of our clients asked us to build a workshop, which would be custom for all the EAs in the company, and really the executive EAs. And I said to the team, I don't really want to do that. We're busy. I didn't love the idea. What you're telling me is that's probably what we should do. We should. And I'm just thinking in general for all of us.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you're cruel. Why would you deprive? Why would you deprive?
I'm stupid and cruel.
No. You're very smart, but a little bit cruel. Why would you deprive the executive assistant?
No, I didn't want to. No, I'll give it. No, I didn't. I didn't think. Yeah, I just, we're busy, and it seemed like a small group of people. But of course, they're very influential.
Let me give love to all the executive assistants out there. For one thing, those who are still on the job have gone through rounds and rounds and rounds of layoffs of their peers who are doing the same job in companies. Most of them have been there for decades. they own a large part of the institutional knowledge of the company because the leaders, they rotate, but the executive assistants, they stay.
Right.
And they know who you have to see, who you have to listen to. They can tell you straight in your face, by the way, they are undoubted, what is right with you and what is wrong with you, right? Like if you want a solid humility test, you go to an executive assistant and you start a chat for 5 minutes. And I really love them. Like, I love all of them. I wish all of them to keep being their better selves and to keep serving the company and their leaders and the broader community and keeping the institutional knowledge with AI, right? And those are, I think, very pivotal figures in the company. They should never be underestimated.
Yeah, I agree.
Not should anyone else, but like if they're here, they matter.
I agree. Love it. Oh yeah, we're gonna get to the money shot. Because you said, yeah, I'll come join this conversation, but why are we even talking about ROI and why are we even tracking it? So, but you know my point of view. Most CFOs, you have a CEO at Moderna that did allow for you to deploy a great AI, so a premium AI to everybody pretty much at once, right? And a lot of us don't have that. We don't have CFOs or CEOs that want to spend that money for everybody to have an AI all at once, and or they want to sort of get the cheap AI, the less performant AI. So this is a reality, Bryce, for a lot of people. Proving ROI, proving productivity gains, obviously trying to build business cases. So give us the tactical advice, and then let's talk about a little more philosophically as well.
Yeah. So first, I want to be start with honesty and de-average the topic, because we shouldn't be talking about ROI the same way when we're talking about adoption of a platform like ChatGPT Enterprise, or when we're talking about like a 6-month project with 80 engineers on organizing orchestration platforms in validated environment for like business critical tasks, right? Like it's two different worlds altogether, right?
Yeah.
But my point still applies for both. And I'll tell you why for each of them, right? And then we can find everything in the middle of the spectrum. On the first part, the platform, ChatGPT Enterprise, Gemini, Copilot, right? Those are on average, face price, $30 per person per month. Mm-hmm. That is the price of a lunch. So I say to leaders who are listening to us, come on, offer lunch to your people, right? Like it's $30 per person per month. What do you have to lose? Certainly you're going to have a 6-digit figure at the end of the month for like any segment of 5,000 users. But is it really the kind of savings you want to go through? You want to take a lunch away from them, and why? And the fundamental topic here is empower your people with great tools and great technology and let them amaze you with what they do with it. You're going to be amazed. And I will say this, I joined Moderna from Google. Google has just become, last week, a $3 trillion company. So I'm going to argue that this is a company that understands finance and that is not bad at valuation. In my 5 years at Google, I have never, ever heard focus on the ROI. This has never happened to me. I heard time and again, focus on the user, and everything else will follow. It's a mantra of those tech companies. This is how we got out of the world of the Oracles and IBMs and SAPs and into the world of the Facebooks and Amazons and Googles, right? Who focus on the user. Now, your people are users. Your clients are users. Your entire ecosystem is users. Focus on the users and the money will follow. Because of course, I'm not saying sacrifice and forget return on investment. I'm saying believe in this case because the investment is so low and the return is so obvious. Believe in your people and take a leap of faith. Now for the other topic, right? The one about the 6 months of the 80 engineers and the business critical front.
Hold a sec. So just for the audience, you mean the other front being building a very bespoke, more complex kind of agent or agentic workflow, whatever. Yeah.
Which might cost you money and which you might need to also operate with compute costs because you're going to use APIs and that might run if you have a lot of tasks. You have millions of tasks running through it. It's going to very soon have both a big CapEx and a big OpEx. So like you're going to need to think about this from a financial standpoint.
Yep.
This should not be a line item of its own. That part of your business does or does not have an expected return on investment as a whole. Like your strategy and your financial strategy should not be dictated by a technology. They should be dictated by how you think you're going to bring value to your users and to your shareholders. And so if we say, for instance, that a priority for Moderna is to accelerate clinical trials, then I'm going to rush at how could I make a platform validated and qualified to accelerate clinical trials, and then how could we launch a project to operate there? But this is not just AI. It needs data, it needs processes, it needs dashboards, it needs ways of working. This is a massive undertaking. And if all of those layers are not in place, your AI at the top of the iceberg, and the 90% rest is people, process, data, and so on. Your AI is going to sit on the shoulder of a giant, and it is part of the resource allocation. So this is not me saying you should not allocate resource in a company. This is me saying you have already made the decision to allocate resource in the company, and don't start saying, oh, by the way, there's internet or there's electricity in there. Maybe you should do like an internet ROI before we go and enable our marketing people to launch a web campaign. No, like no one does this. It is part of the whole of your budget allocation. You should look at the pros and cons. You should understand in the perspective of the broader project. And then if it makes sense, then you go for it, right? So this is why I don't like the topic of ROI per se, because first, too many people like misunderstand it for efficiency. And we talked about this. It's not just efficiency. It's transitional towards better ways of working, safer, more creative. And secondly, on one side, it's pretty cheap. And so you don't have much to lose. And the other side is so important that you should not take it out of context.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little bit, but we're a little short of time, but I want to take the time. So I'll take the flack on my side. Right. But it's now easy to, as you know, back in the day, we would like ban Facebook at the office, and like the internet was like, it's only in the fullness of time, I think everybody's become convinced that it's obviously an indispensable productivity tool. It's the way we work, but it took a while, right? And along the way, we did dumb things like, have bans, and you can watch YouTube when you're at the office and so on. So yeah. Aren't you a little bit saying, listen, you just trust everyone else, trust us in the AI world that we're going to get to a place where all this is going to pay for itself? Aren't you a little bit saying, hey, it worked out in the past? Kind of what you're saying, it worked out in the past, it's going to work out again. That's basically what you're saying.
It's a little bit more than this, because it's also a matter of how much you trust and love your people. And we're always back together with the same topic. I love OKRs, objectives, key results. Why I love them, they avoid micromanagement. We agree together on the objective of your role, and we agree together on how we're going to measure the way that you're meeting those objectives. Now, if you want to spend 3 hours a day watching YouTube, as long as we agreed on the objectives and you're delivering the results, it's fine. Like, why would I micromanage you? I trust you, right? I believe in you. I hired you because I thought you are the best. So now if tomorrow people do a cat GPT that does cat faces out of their pictures because they like it and they want to put it in social network, because that's something that happened at Moderna, and it became actually one of the topics of the Harvard business case that you mentioned. And all the students are like, cat GPT, they're out of their minds at Moderna. But right. Bear in mind, this was a way to propagate the message. It was a symbol of identity. People put it on their social networks to show that they were into AI. And how long does it take? 5, 10, 15 minutes? Why is it so bad if we are aligned on objectives and aligned on the way we're going to measure your success? So we're back to this topic. It's not that, I don't like people having or not having YouTube at work. Is that you cannot come to a world in which you have all those beautiful SaaS collaborative software if everyone doesn't have the internet. So it took the forest to create the tree. Mm-hmm. And when we use together today tools such as this Zoom platform, right? How would it work if everyone didn't have the internet? Or Google Docs, or any other thing that you like to do on work applications, leveraging the internet and the power of compute through the internet, you need the forest of adoption for the tree of that use case to appear, right? And in the process, to believe that your people are not there to betray you, to slack at work, and to do stupid things with stupid tools, you should still protect them, protect their data, protect their privacy, give them guardrails, explain to them the do's and don'ts. This is a whole new technology. Like, don't give it to them and then let them run away with it without some level of training, some level of governance, some level of explanation. And I know all the other guests have talked about it, but like, it goes without saying, I'm still going to say it. Once you've made them safe, once you've created a playground for them, right? And it's safe, and that's how we can play. It's fine. Playing is how every animal species that has some evolution understands and learns things. Anyone who has kitten or puppies knows this. Playing is the way that kittens, puppies, babies, and humans, and me and you learn new things. Give them a little slack, let them play with it at home, at work, let them find ideas of what they can do with it, and then they're going to amaze you.
I love it. Bryce, in chat, we're gonna end on that. Playground, play. Bryce, in chat, people want you to be their CEO.
Be ready, because then that means that I'll be working for you all day, and that you're going to be so empowered and so amazed that we're going to do amazing things together. I want everyone, because if you are on this event right now, if you're listening to this conversation, if you came here and spend your precious time, not with your loved ones, not with your priorities at work, but learning, growing, listening, paying attention, it means that you're exactly the right people for the startup that I would be a CEO of, and I can't wait to work with you.
I love it. I'll sign up for that startup, Bryce. You be CEO. I'm getting tired. All right, guys. Thank you, Bryce, again, for joining us. Appreciate it. Always learn from you.
Thank you, Bryce. We can't beat that, Greg. We got to do better. Bryce, hope you're ready for the applications rolling in from the chat. I got to say, this was a POV shifting conversation, as it always is with Bryce. So thank you both. Quickly, before we dive into the next conversation, we're going to find our way back to one final barrier to AI adoption and AI proficiency that we'd like to share with you. Taylor is back on the stage with that final lightning insight. Taylor, all you.
Awesome. Thanks, Maxwell. Tough act to follow. Okay, I'm going to go fast. I'll get this done in probably 6 or 7 minutes, because then I'm chatting with Michael, who I'm really excited for you guys all to hear from. So we have shared 3 of about 10 or 15 barriers to ROI that we see from all the work we do with hundreds of companies. We're going to close with a 4th, which is really focused on use cases. And all this has been touched on by a bunch of our speakers. Employees don't actually know how to use AI. So I'm going to start where I've started a lot of these. This is pretty typical data of a company that we work with that's had AI rolled out for at least, let's say, 4 to 6 months. This specifically is a financial services company that, again, has a relatively savvy knowledge worker population, I'd say. They have had 2 LLMs in their hands kind of for about 6 months. And we ask employees when we go in, we say, do you have an AI use case? And specifically, right, do you have a way that AI is significantly improving your work? And nearly half of employees in this company, and again, this is not a company that's behind, this is just kind of a typical company that we're usually starting with. Nearly half of employees say they don't have a specific AI use case. And so from my point of view, this is what kind of your entire first 6 to 12 months of rollout is about, right? Helping employees find their personal use cases. Because as Bryce was just saying, that's the first step. They can't unlock those transformative, use cases that we all want to hear about, those big ROI, high impact use cases, if they don't understand how this brand new technology works. Again, they're the subject matter experts on your business. So we have to find those use cases. It gets worse before it gets better, because when we dig into the half of employees that do report having a use case, a lot of them are usually still beginner level. So my team has looked at thousands of survey responses at this point, tens of thousands of survey responses. And these are the top 5 use cases consistently over and over we see people reporting, right? They're rewriting emails, they're finding quick fixes for code, or their Excel formulas. They're using AI like Google. They're not talking to AI like a teammate. Which Eric talked about. They're summarizing documents. These are good starting points. These are quick time savings. They help people see quickly, oh, okay, this is how I might be able to work with this technology. They are critical to the adoption curve. This is not where the ROI is yet, right? It's where most people start, but it's not where we start to be able to measure impact to the business. Compare that to something like this. I just wanted to show an example here, and I know there have been a lot of great examples shared by Leo and by Eric and by Alicia and others. But when we think about what's a more intermediate or advanced level use case, still at the individual level, but still with the potential to actually unlock ROI for the company, this is the type of use case that we might see, right? So this is an employee who basically, in their words, took something that used to be done by 4 market analysts doing a market deep dive and created a workflow that got them probably 80–90% of the value of what those market analysts would do in 24 hours. This is not a custom app, right? When we think about what Leo and Greg were talking about, this is not that top layer of business process automation. It's built on top of 2 LLMs the company had rolled out. But if it was scaled to hundreds of investors in this company, it could result in something where we can very clearly say, oh, that has generated ROI for the business, right? This could lead to this company has a contract with a research partner that's generating all of this market level analysis with them. So could they end that contract, right? That's the type of kind of real ROI that we start to see, but you can't find those use cases, those types of even team-wide workflows if your employees haven't seen their own personal use cases yet. So this is the journey you have to enable, right? Moving every employee from I don't have an individual use case to I have a basic personal use case. That's okay, that's the first step. But then quickly to I have an advanced individual use case. And then finally, I have something that can be implemented team-wide and is actually a consistent workflow that all of us use in the same way to generate real impact. It doesn't happen overnight. We've talked a lot about patience today. I think everyone feels behind. They want to see return on their investments like yesterday. But again, it takes time for employees to kind of play in the sandbox, like I talked about earlier, like Bryce, I think much more eloquently just talked about as well, right? And in most organizations that see, there are companies that we work with where 80–90% of their employees at least are at that basic individual use case level and on their way to that advanced and team-wide level. So your job as an AI leader, from our point of view, is to shorten that time, to shorten that adoption curve. You have to help employees find those individual use cases. First, you have to show them. So many people have talked about champions programs today. I'm not going to belabor that point, but that is the key first step. Then you need to actually hold their hand so they can find their own hyper-relevant personalized use cases. A couple of people have talked about Prof AI today, which I love as the person who leads Prof AI at Section. And that's exactly what we saw as an opportunity, right? Is how do we show people those personalized use cases? And then ultimately I stole this line from a conversation I had with Bryce, very lucky for me, a couple of weeks ago. He said something where he said, your job as the leader, and he said a variation of this today, is to create the conditions for your employees to tell you the transformative use cases. And I love that. I totally agree. I think that's the journey you have to bring your employees on. And so when I think about your job as a leader of AI, my job as a leader of AI, how do I move everyone through that adoption curve kind of faster? Okay, Maxwell, I know we have a great guest next. I'm going to turn the stage back to you and to introduce him, and then we'll jump in.
For just a second. Yes, thanks, Taylor. You are sticking around for the next one. And the next guest that is up is Michael Dominick. I'm not trying to start stuff, folks. I'm not starting the pod, but I think Michael might have a bit of a bone to pick with the AI is like electricity crowd. We can't measure the ROI, or we shouldn't be measuring it. Michael is measuring it. Michael's reality is all about quarterly board presentations tracking the top 10 highest value AI implementations. There's a BDR team GPT that's driving 182% more calls, I think, 60% more bookings for sure. Marketing campaigns being created faster, with 4 times the volume. So all of that is meticulously measured, all delivering real revenue impact. So this is ROI measurement that actually works. And Taylor and Michael will talk about that. Welcome, Michael. And Taylor, the mic is all yours again.
Thank you,
awesome. Max. Thanks, Maxwell. Michael, it's nice to see you. Our session is titled Measuring and Reporting on ROI, which everyone has been hankering for all day. So before we get into that, I'm going to ask you to get pretty specific in some of how you're doing this measurement, but I just want to set the scene for everyone on the call. So don't do a full intro, obviously, but just tell us how many employees are at UserTesting, remind everyone or tell everyone what your role is, and what AI have you made available to who in the organization, just so we can understand kind of the lay of the land.
Okay, let me unpack those one by one. So I think the first question was how many employees. So we're about 800 employees at UserTesting. I think another question was the tools that we use. ChatGPT Enterprise is our center of gravity tool. Eric mentioned this earlier. We're also a Google shop, so Google does give us Gemini models for free, and we do use those as well. But certainly ChatGPT is our center of gravity. And then we have point solutions across the business, right, that are integrating AI features into their platforms. And we use those as well.
Okay, awesome. So I know you have some really good examples of use cases where you've measured ROI. Before we get to that, I want to talk about maybe that GPT piece and how you think about that, because that's something that almost all of those 800 employees have access to at UserTesting, right?
Everybody has access to ChatGPT Enterprise. That is correct.
Okay. And how did you, so, you know, we just got off obviously with Bryce, who talked a lot about, you know, measuring ROI of AI is like measuring electricity, the ROI of electricity. Like, you know, I'm going to tee it up for you. Do you agree? How do you think about measuring the ROI of your investments? Let's start there.
So I certainly, I mean, Bryce, I've heard him talk about this a lot, and I have tons and tons of respect for Bryce. You know, I look to him for guidance quite a lot. And I do agree in spirit with what Bryce is saying. Like, I do think that this is going to be, you know, to anyone that's played with AI at least a little bit and connected it to the way that they work a little bit, it's very obvious that this is very transformational, right? But, and I think that's where, you know, I would agree with Bryce is, you know, it's hard to measure how transformational this is. But at the end of the day, I mean, we do have a CEO that we report to. We have boards that we need to justify our expenses to. And there are legitimate questions that are being asked right now around, is this driving value? If so, where is it driving value in the business? And I do think it is worth the time to dig in and answer those questions. And I think, you know, for two reasons. One is I just mentioned, you know, we have, you know, our CEOs and our boards are asking us to justify those expenses. I think that's one reason. I think the other reason is the possibilities with AI feel so abstract, right? They feel so limitless. There are so many different things that we can be doing and ways that we can be integrating it into our business. But when you start to measure the impact that it's having on your business, then you start to get pretty laser focused on where to devote your most efforts, where to double down. And I think that's been the approach that we've taken at UserTesting.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about the specific approach you guys have taken and the measurement. Maybe walk me through one or two of those examples where you have measured the ROI and help everyone think through also when in the process you're measuring, right? Like just try to be explicit around, did you build a business case first and then implement the solution and then measure after? Like, let's get into kind of the nitty gritty of one or two of these examples.
Yeah. So we try to be really focused on what we feel like are the most meaningful deployments. You know, we want to validate that this is actually very meaningful. So just going back a little bit to the tool set, yes, we do use ChatGPT Enterprise. We have built a very strong culture around custom GPTs. I think that they're still probably one of the most underrated AI features that you can deploy into an organization. So we built a really strong culture around that. We have hundreds and hundreds of GPTs across our company. And again, like we just try to get really focused on those deployments that are making a big difference. Now, to go to your question, Taylor, how do we measure that? Really, it's a matter of understanding we're building a GPT to deliver value to a specific part of the business usually. And what we try to do is measure what the before and after state is. So I think you had mentioned earlier, one example was a GPT that drives discovery call bookings. You know, we're a SaaS company. Discovery call booking, the discovery call is a really important part of our sales cycle. And we want to drive as many discovery calls as possible with meaningful prospects, with prospects that we think we can have meaningful conversations with. So we did build a series of custom GPTs that helped us do that, right? It helped us identify more relevant prospects. It helped us have more meaningful conversations to help drive those discovery calls. And what we did was we built the GPT. We looked at what is our typical conversion rate on discovery calls for, you know, our outreach efforts and before, and then we looked at what was it after 3 months after deployment. And in that first 3 months, it grew discovery call bookings by 60%. And then over the subsequent months after that, it continued to double over. So that's really interesting. And then the discovery call itself isn't going to tell you anything about the overall outcome. But what you can start to do is put a value to that. Like we know what the average value, we know what the average conversion rate is for a discovery call. We can segment that out by industry, by customer, right? So like we have a really good data that tells us if we get on a discovery call with this type of customer, our bookings is X%. So then we could start to put a value on the discovery call. So if we're driving that by 60% and then by 60% again, we can project a value that has to us. And then, so we started doing those measurements about a year ago. And now what we could do is completely follow through on the long tail of those measurements, right? We could see that those GPTs that drove more discovery calls are now converting more customers into our platform.
Okay, I want to there's a lot there. That's great. So I want to, because I was going to ask you about dollars, right? Like is the measurement ultimately, a lot of time when we're talking about ROI, we are imagining, I think, dollars, right? And so you're basically saying there is a way you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs, right? And say, well, yes, the impact of AI is this increase on our rate of booking discovery calls or converting them or whatever it is. And then I can attach a dollar value based on that, which, to be fair, is easier in sales, I think, than some other parts of the business, right?
Yeah, that is true. But when you take a step back and look at our AI transformation program, I mean, we're trying to bring AI to every part of the business. And to a large extent, we've done that. We can't, I can't be in every part of the business, but what I do is get hyper-focused on the 3 most meaningful things that we could do as a business. Again, we're a SaaS company. So for most SaaS companies, the bottom line metrics that are going to matter most to you are growing revenue, retaining customers, and increasing your product velocity. Those are all measurable things. And that tends to be where we look at measuring ROI.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And those are, I think that's a great point, because even something like velocity, right, is a financial metric that isn't expressed financially. I want to go back to custom GPTs for a second, because we've spent a little bit of time talking about that. And I think there are a lot of a lot of the organizations that are pointed to that are, the beacons of use of AI. They often cite, as Moderna does, right? Like we have thousands of GPTs, and you just said, we have hundreds of custom GPTs. Like, how do you think about building those? And also, we've talked a lot about today about there's been a concept of like intake forms and outtake forms, right? Like, do you guys think about it as I have to justify, what do I have to prove basically to justify making an investment in kind of GPTs or whatever's off the shelf? Or is it more like, you can try everything out, and then after, let's make sure if we're going to scale it, there's ROI or something else, some other kind of strategy that I'm not thinking of?
Yeah, our approach to that is to democratize it, right? Like we want that to be an experimental process across our entire organization. And like I said, like we've actually built over 800 custom GPTs in user testing. We have 800 employees. Certainly not all of those GPTs are driving value. Many of them are just experiments. Many of them are built for individual use, and arguably those are driving value. But there is a really large cross-section of those GPTs that are being used broadly across the organization, and they are driving like very transformational value. So Taylor, to go back to your question, we intentionally democratize that. We are okay with the messiness that results in that. I know Bryce has talked about this before. I didn't get a chance to see his whole talk today, but I know he's talked about, and I agree with him, like those are products, right? If you're signing up to build a custom GPT, you're also signing up to be a product manager. But at this stage in our deployment, I don't want to gate that, right? Like I want us to be okay with a little bit of that messiness that comes with it being fully democratized. And where I actually do really agree with Bryce is where he talks about you learn the most by playing, right? And another word for that is experimenting. Experimentation is play. And that is something I strongly encourage across user testing. We talk a lot about different GPTs that are driving value. We talk about, ways that people can be, building those experiments and playing with those experiments. So even though going back to those many, many GPTs that aren't driving value, the value that they actually did drive is that people experimented and they probably had a lot of aha moments about how to continue to bring AI into their work. So maybe they experimented with a custom GPT, maybe that GPT drove value, maybe it didn't, but the real value was they became more engaged in the process. They became more engaged and more thoughtful about how is AI actually going to transform my work? And then maybe they built another GPT that was more valuable.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it ties back to something Eric from Logitech was talking about too, right? It's more a metric or a proxy for the sophistication of use and the frequency of use. Not all 800 of those you're saying are not a product. I do want to go back to your BDR example and your discovery call example and ask you two other questions. So one is very tactical. Who's doing the measurement? Is it something that you are like putting on and you want the employee, I assume someone from sales was owning this project. So maybe that's an assumption that you should make sure that you should validate for me or not. But is that coming from the business units? Is that something that you own as the head of AI? Like, how do you think about doing the actual measurement from a centralized versus decentralized point of view?
So that's a partnership. So what I'm looking at is the most meaningful deployments of AI into the business. And then I'm partnering with the people who are driving those to help generate those measurements. And by the way, it's not all custom GPTs. Another great example of this is our marketing team had to build, I think it was 12 microsites. And like the old way of doing that is pretty laborious, or sometimes you have to go outside the company to help you build that stuff. There was a girl on our marketing team, Erin, I will give her a shout out. And she like kind of rolled up her sleeves and said, I'm going to experiment with some vibe coding inside of ChatGPT. And she was actually able to build all of those microsites, do it faster than the old way. We didn't have to engage, any kind of like outside agency for help with that. And that drove immediate value right there, right? So like I will partner with Erin to help us wrap our arms around how much value did that bring, that use of AI, how much value did that bring to our organization in that deployment. But now that we've done that and we know what it looks like, we could do it a lot easier next time. Where else can we do that across the business? So a little bit of a long answer to your question. I think the short answer is those measurements are done in partnership. And I'm, constantly looking at these interesting things that people are doing and then partnering with them on that.
And you give everyone a sense of scale. You are 800 employees. Remind me, do you have anyone on your team? Are you a one-man team, or what other resources, if any, do you have?
So I'm technically a one-man team, but I am supported by a champions group of a few dozen folks across the organization. We have a formal champions group here at User Testing as well. They do diffuse a lot of the work to transform the organization. Just like most champions programs that we've heard from today, those are folks, cross-functional people who are signing up for the mission to say, I'm going to continue to experiment. I'm going to push the boundaries here a little bit. And I'm going to teach the folks on my team and teams adjacent to me, here are some interesting things, interesting ways that we're transforming our work.
I want to zoom back up from the projects, because I know you have a lot of those kind of examples, and you just shared a couple. Greg started the session today talking about there's two ways to think about ROI in organizations. Kind of he teed it up as cut versus create, right? Like more efficiency versus growth. When you look across user testing right now, what do you feel is the ratio of ROI you guys are getting? Because I'm hearing like there is ROI there. And so is it, just think, I would love to hear a little bit about that.
I think the first thing I would say is that we are not trying to calculate holistic ROI across the company. What we're trying to do is focus on those individual deployments. And it's interesting. I didn't get a chance to hear Greg talk about this, the cut versus create. That's interesting. I think about it a little bit differently. I think about squishy ROI and hard firm ROI. So the squishy ROI comes back to the question of, why does every company need an AI transformation program? And then the first part of that is the obvious potential for transformational value across the company. So that's the first part. Second part is responsibility. And responsibility has two different branches to it. The first branch is making sure that your employees are using AI responsibly, using data responsibly, not engaging in shadow AI. Again, something that got talked about a lot today. But then I think the most important branch of responsibility is actually the responsibility that we have to our employees. I used to say this with a little bit of hesitation. I don't have that anymore. This sounds hyperbolic, but we're living through one of the most transformational moments in human history. And I do think that employers who consider themselves a good employer bear a responsibility to lead through the transformation. This is going to impact all of us, right? And I think that's where that squishy ROI comes in. I think most people want to work for a company that is providing this transformation. They're providing the enablement. Really hard to put, hard metrics to all of that stuff. But, again, like this goes back to what Bryce was saying. It's like, you can't like measure the value of that. You just know it's so important. So I think that's the squishy part. And then the firm part is stuff that we've already talked about, which is we can drill into specific deployments. We could look at what was the before and after state of those. And, things like discovery call bookings, increasing marketing campaigns, being more efficient with that stuff, getting more marketing campaigns out, like that stuff all has calculable value to it. And we should be, we should be pretty focused on that.
I agree. I'm gonna flip it back to you where you started. We all also though have CFOs and CEOs asking us questions about the ROI. Before I do that though, I want to help everyone get up to speed a little bit just on your journey. So like, how long have you been in this seat at UserTesting? And also when you started, like, did you have to convince the CEO and the board to roll out GPT Enterprise, or was that, were they already on board? What was kind of the vibe?
It's a great question. I think this is played out differently in most organizations. What's funny is I think like, Eric, Bryce, myself, like others, we've all kind of ended up in the same place where we are working for organizations that are completely bought in on this is a real transformation, like formalize it, right? And I think we've all kind of come about this in different ways. I've been at UserTesting for over 6 years. I've had a lot of different roles in this organization. I was a customer of UserTesting before joining the team. I used to design chatbots before joining UserTesting, and I used to test them in our platform. So like this conversation about AI has actually been happening quite a while. And, we've deployed ML models into our platform, but really what happened is in November of 2022, there were pockets of this company that recognized how important this moment was. And I think slowly we all started to find each other. Slowly we all started to come together. And I would fast forward to November of 2023, my aha moment about how AI will transform the workforce. And again, this is going to go back to custom GPTs is, Sam Altman got up, at a dev day in November of 2023, before the blip. And he talked about these custom GPTs and you can build these GPTs. So I actually went to work with building some experiments, some like lightweight experiments that didn't use any sensitive data. I showed that to our executives and they were already having this conversation, right? So like these things kind of came together, and it was really at that moment where, we all kind of realized this does need a formal transformation effort. My pitch to the company was, hey, by the way, I know a guy, I'm happy to drive this.
So let's say, because you're totally right, there are similarities in all of your stories, and there's some real executive buy-in. Let's say I don't work in a company like that, and my CFO is questioning, I want to roll out GPT Enterprise, let's say, or Copilot, right, or Gemini, to my knowledge workforce. What's your advice to them? Like, how does someone can they articulate the ROI? Is there a way to build a business case? Like, how would you advise that individual?
So that actually was an important part of the experiments that I was doing before we had any formal transformation. So going back to the GPT experiments that I was running, really what I focused on was a problem that we all have in all of our organizations, which is information sprawl, right? Fragmentation of stuff all over the place. And that's actually something AI is really good at, is taking all these like disparate but connected sources of information and making sense of it. So I built a custom GPT that did that thing. And I said, okay, well, let's imagine the possibilities if we connected a GPT to all these different systems and all this different data. And actually, I did a study inside of our company. You know, one of the luxuries that I have is I have I have access to a research platform. Right. That's what we are. So I used our platform to conduct an internal study that showed what was the size of that problem and what is the potential for us to overcome that problem, and then connected that to the value. So like, yeah, I guess like this conversation about ROI has been there from the very beginning for us. Yeah. And that was a clear indication to all of the people who are already at least a little bit excited about this, that this is definitely something that we should be.
And did you express that impact in dollars, or did you express that impact more in, we all know this is a problem and look, this could work, more as like a prototype or a proof of concept?
Yeah, I did express it in dollars because most of I mentioned that internal study that I did, most of that was actually focused on our go-to-market team and where this problem is in our go-to-market team. So it was first is like how pervasive is the problem? How much time are we spending because of information fragmentation? If we were to improve that by 50%, right? Like how meaningful would that be? So yeah, like it was just like, it was a calculation. It was looking at the long tail impact of solving a problem. And then how would that actually connect to one of the, again, going back to the 3 really important things in our organization, how would that help us drive more revenue, retain more customers, and increase our product velocity?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point. Basically what you're saying is you would say to that person who's having to make the business case to the CFO, pick a problem that everyone's pretty aligned on is a problem, and do a bit of a prototype and show kind of do a proof of concept of the business case and say, well, if we had 10 of these or 100 of these, help them kind of see. I think that's really, really smart. I do want to get to, because you mentioned something, obviously you guys are a research company, and you and I have talked a bit in the past about, this idea of, do we measure productivity and do we measure time saved, and how do we do that? And, does that look like, there are people that are experimenting with surveying employees and asking them, like, how do you think about that? Is that a vector of ROI that you're thinking about? And if so, are you guys measuring it?
Yeah, it is. It actually is something that we do look at. We do put a focus on this. So we use our platform to do internal surveys and internal studies that help us understand how much time are people reporting to save, where in the business is that time being saved. We do more qualitative studies where we're asking people, okay, you're telling us you're saving 10 hours a week. What are you doing with that time? Like, the time measurement is important, right? I think that's a start to the calculation, but I don't think it's the whole calculation. The outcomes are really what's most important here. And you'll get in the direction of that, again, with the surveys. I think everyone should be doing the surveys, find out what your employees are telling you about, where it's producing meaning for their work and how much time that they're saving. But then, take that another step and find out what outcomes are we actually driving because we're saving all of that time.
What is the benefit of doing that? I guess, like, I hear you, and I think, like, is there, like, just to play devil's advocate, like, is there a benefit of doing all that? Because it's work, right? To survey everyone and ask everyone about the time saved. And if you're saying you have to go the one step further and you have to go to that hard ROI versus, this is maybe in the middle between squishy and hard, like, is that worth the time, I guess? Especially you're only one guy, right? Like, how do you think about the value of that relative to other things?
Yeah, I think it is worth the time because, again, I think this goes back to, at some point, somebody's going to ask, is all of this worth it, right? Like, is it worth it for us to spend all this time learning this new thing, spending all this money, bringing in these new tools into our organization? So yes, like, that is part of the answer to that question of, is it worth it? But then the other part to this as well is doing that internal research also helps us identify where is AI having the biggest impact in the business. It actually also helps us understand where's the hesitancy as well.
Right.
Where are the conscientious objectors in our business, and what reasons do they have for not using AI? Some of it is like very legitimate concerns around AI. Some of it is like, I'm just not that interested, right? I'm not that interested in learning anything, right? And knowing all that is going to have an impact on you know, how you design your program, how you talk to your employees, like how you set up your enablement.
Yeah. Okay. We're racing to the close here. I want to, you know, you like Bryce, like Eric, I think you're in an organization. We haven't talked about your adoption numbers. I think it's fair to assume they're high. Like if you're, again, think about you're talking to someone who is not there, right? They're at 10%, 20% adoption. Again, they are having to make that case to the CFO or the CEO. What's your best piece of advice for those leaders that are kind of in your seat in that different environment?
Yeah, I think I would echo what Bryce had said. You know, give your employees an opportunity to play. And again, like our version of that is experiment. You know, roll out the right tools, the enablement, the training, right? Like that's just scratching the surface, but really like give your employees the opportunity to play, to experiment, and then put a spotlight on wherever somebody wants to say like, hey, I did something interesting here. You know, there are other people doing similar work to me. And even if you're not, this might inspire ways that you might go and experiment with these tools. I think that's been what's been driving our adoption and our transformation.
I'm going to ask you 1B. I hear you on bringing them, you know, letting the employees play, but how do I, if my organization's not there yet, right? If they are like, well, we want to see the business case before we actually just unleash this technology to everyone. Any advice for that person on how they maybe communicate that ROI, you know, up or not, right? Do they reframe it for you know, their leaders?
I think maybe it like depends. I think you maybe want to drill into like, what is that hesitation and where is that hesitation coming from within the business? You know, where that's happened in meaningful ways in our company, what I've tried to do is sit down with, you know, people that have influence and people that have that voice and some of that hesitation and work with them on ways to bring AI into their work. And they become quick converts, right? They're like, oh, well, you just helped me do this thing. I didn't even know it was possible of doing that. And then that unlocks, you know, you have another champion there.
Totally. Yeah. I was talking to someone and just about the idea that AI is such an odd technology in a way because it seems so scary and there's so much resistance around it. But once you actually get someone, even a CEO or someone quite senior into the tech, it can be so amazing that if you get them to that point, then it almost like kicks off this flywheel. I think Bryce talked about it too. Like they went from 85 to 100%, but they never went back because once the person saw it. So I think that's a really good point as well. Like you frankly maybe have to start more on the individual side with those leaders, get kind of what you said before, right? Pick a problem that everyone agrees is a problem and use that as the incubation basically of the business case and then say, okay, imagine everyone had this, or imagine there were 10 of these or 15 or whatever. Yep. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us. I always love talking to you. I learned something even today. So Maxwell, we will
great to see you.
Yeah, you as well.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you, Michael. Great conversation. Folks, I'm very excited. And if I had a way to do a drum roll right now, I would, because we have something very, very special for you all today to close us out. We're going to throw it over to a live stream from New York City to a session happening at Horizon Media to chat about the future of AI and agencies. Let me just check to see if they're ready. Looks like the team is getting ready. It is my pleasure to hand it over to the NYC crew to briefly introduce the conversation to the in-person audience that is also there.
All righty, I'm being told that we are ready to go, or I'm getting a maybe not quite yet. Now go. Okay, welcome everybody. We have about 100 people here in person in the Horizon Media Holdings offices and another few thousand online. My name is Bobby Isaacson with Section, and it's my honor to briefly introduce our panelists for today, starting first with Greg Shove. He is the CEO of Section, an AI transformation agency, and Bob Lord, the president of Horizon Media Holdings. They're going to be talking about the opportunity with AI within agencies, what's coming, the challenges and opportunities. So without further ado, Greg and Bob.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay, guys, we are at the end of 7 hours. Bob, you're taking us home.
I'm ready for it.
You're here to land the plane.
Yeah.
We've had people online from all over the world for this whole time. It's been amazing. We had people in from Egypt, from every corner of the United States, Canada, my home country. all over the world. So appreciate Horizon Media hosting us all day and you joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, to finish up. I'm going to probably ignore most of the questions that we prepped on and what your PR team insisted that I stay on script with.
Great, I'm excited about that.
Just because it's at the end of 7 hours. Yeah. Can you remember the moment when you played with generative AI? I know you're old like me, but let's forget about that and focus on the last couple 3 years in this era, this moment of AI, which is really generative AI. The first time you were playing around with, might have been GPT or whatever, and what you thought.
Yeah, no, look, I think the light bulb went off for me around Perplexity, quite honestly. Okay. It was someone had told me about it, and we were at a dinner party, and I downloaded it, and I asked Perplexity to tell me the ref, and the desserts had come, and Chipwich's sandwiches had showed up. So I asked Perplexity to tell me, how do you make a Chipwich sandwich? And literally in a second, it told you what it was. And so I showed my friends that we're like, oh my God, this is pretty amazing. And then I said, can you tell me how to make it in Spanish? And then it immediately told me in Spanish how to make it. And then we said, how do you make it in? And we just kept going and going and going. And finally I said, can you tell me how to make it in Klingon? And it said, I'm sorry, I don't know Klingon. So it was sort of really an interesting, but the light bulb went off for me that this is just going to change the world in general.
And when was the next light bulb as it relates to this business, the business you're in? And was that same moment, or what happened later maybe that where you're like, holy shit moment as it relates to being an agency?
Yeah, no, look, I just, I spent almost a decade at IBM. And you sort of at IBM, you learn that technology, AI, I mean, we were using regression models, we were using LLMs within our software. But what was amazing to me after I left IBM and started to come back into the media marketing landscape, I realized how complex this world had gotten for marketers. And I kept thinking to myself, when I sort of helped to establish the programmatic marketplace, like, how did it get to the point where it's more complex now when we have better technology than we've ever had before? We have better data assets than we've ever before, and the marketers are more confused about how to get to their consumer. So the light bulb for me went off sort of in that sort of understanding of outside the marketing and media landscape, things have progressed in supply chain and asset management, in AI in general with Watson. Like, things were getting better with those products. But when it came into marketing and media, it was a free-for-all. And there were so many vendors. I remember first taking the job here at Horizon. I must have had 5,000 emails of requests of different companies wanting to meet with me because of the position I was taking. And I'm the agency. Can you imagine taking a CMO job and the amount of vendors, whether it's data, whether it's creative, or whether it's media, are vending to you? So the mission that we took on here at Horizon was, how do we bring AI tools and new data structures to business to make it easier for the marketer? And that journey within just the short time I've been here has been remarkable.
Let's talk more about that. Yeah. So how long have you been here? When did that journey start, and where you're at?
Yeah, so I started consulting, advising probably about 2 years ago, took a permanent job only about 9 months ago. But while I was consulting, the great thing, the way Horizon approaches sort of marketing is a very audience-centric strategy. So we had a seed of a data asset called Blue, was called the Blue ID, is called the Blue ID. And the great thing about that is it's a very focused on going after specific audiences, and very different than I would talk about some of our competitors. And what you learned very quickly was if you could use AI answer engines on top of this data set, you can unearth the data. You can democratize the access to that data. Where before we were always using our data scientists and technologists to actually write the code. Now I could just write it in natural language and say, how do I find all the women in LA that are interested in EVs? And the answer comes back to you. So with that seeded, that kernel, within 4 months, at CES last year, we launched the Blue platform, the open ecosystem platform. So part of it is I didn't have technology debt to worry about, right? Which is a really big barrier to the adoption of AI, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a minute. But this idea that I could democratize access, you start to then think, well, why can't I give this tool to my CMO? Why can't I give the tool to my customer? So now I have a collaboration portal with me as an agency and you, and we can actually create audiences together, we can create media plans together, and more importantly, we can actually measure ourselves to whether we're successful or not in real time and not wait for campaigns to be. So the technology is there. It just has never been applied to the marketing media landscape, I would say, because of inertia. Whether it's the publisher models and the economics behind that, whether it's the agency models, they're public companies, and the investments they've made in technology, so therefore they have to continue to use that technology, or the data structures that they've bought that they're forcing their customers to use. This is a different world. This is a completely different world. And when you start using LLMs and AI tools, you can actually democratize not only the access, but also the decision-making about how you market. And this new world of marketers have the right to make the decision of where I'm spending my money, how I'm spending my money, and how I'm creating a value exchange with my consumer in ways that have never been done before.
All right, I got a lot of follow-up questions. Let's go to the last one first. Is the marketer ready for all that power and all that kind of, flexibility? Are you giving them a Ferrari and they're not sure how to drive it?
Well, look, I don't think the marketer has a choice. And the reason why I don't think the marketer has a choice is because the consumer's already moved, okay? I would challenge you whether people are using traditional search in the way that they used to use traditional search only 6 months ago. I think you talked about that in the beginning of the forum, right? They've already moved the cheese. They're already using discovery engines like Reddit Answers and Amazon to figure out how to get the products in play, what products to go after or services to go after. So a marketer needs to understand how to use this technology because you got to be in that conversation. If I search for the best SUV on Perplexity and Jeep doesn't show up, that's a problem, right? So I have to, as the owner of the Jeep brand, have to figure out how do I actually market better and more fluidly so I show up in that answer engine. Not to say that search is dead. It's not like this is like TV's dead. Remember we talked about TV's dead was a long time ago? Still going, huh? Fallon's back on? It's all good. Anyhow, the point is, you sort of, the marketers have to get there. So whether they're ready or not doesn't matter because the consumer's already there.
Yeah, this tool you built, though, is an internal tool or a client-facing tool or both? Or it's
no, the whole mission is hands-on keyboard for the client.
Right.
So there are certain clients, to your point, that will not take the tool. They want our media planners to deal with it. Maybe they're not ready for it or they don't want the data set. But we take our data set, we combine it with their first-party data. We give them hands-on keyboards, and then it's a collaboration portal between the two of us to set up an audience, to set up a media plan, to activate that media plan, and to measure it on the back end. Now, the other piece that we're working on, which I think is just as important, is how do you actually do creative optimization while you're doing marketing? And I believe that there are automation tools out there. There's companies like VidMob and Smartly and other pieces like that, where we, creating this open ecosystem, can pull the best of breed innovations around creative optimization and creative scoring in the context of doing media planning. And together, those are sort of a very rich treasure trove sort of essence of getting at your customer in ways we never used to do. 30 years ago, media and creative used to work together synonymously, right? But over time, the industry had divided the two. So we need to bring them back. And I believe technology will bring them back to the benefit of the marketer.
Is this the idea of real-time customization of the creative you're talking about, or not necessarily?
Yeah, no, a little bit of both. So if you think about dynamic creative optimization, which we had about a decade ago, that was done, I would call it in absence of data.
Right.
Okay, it was just a feeling. You wanted to change color from red to blue. It was great, but it didn't really show you any proof or any benefit. We're at the moment with these new technologies where you can take your media data, your media insights, you can combine it with creative scoring. Like VidMob has this amazing creative scoring mechanism, okay? And you can actually combine the scoring of whether or not the ad was effective or not. And instead of actually flighting, let's say 30 different treatments, you're flighting the top 5 within that marketplace based on the media plan. And now I'm not wasting money. I'm not wasting media money. The other angle we can go to is you can synthetically launch that plan before you even launch it in market. So you can actually test it on synthetic audiences. Like that's a novel idea. Remember, we used to simulate things in the 80s. Now it's called synthetic audiences. But you take a synthetic audience and you use a synthetic audience to test a trailer before our clients are out in market with the trailer to see whether or not that trailer is going to resonate with that audience before you even spend $1 of media. That is phenomenal, and that is a major change.
So how's the money go now? So you're now co-creating these campaigns using software.
Yep.
How do you get paid?
Well,
how do you want to get paid?
Okay.
Are you trying to be a SaaS company, by the way?
Yeah. Look, I think the idea of moving away from an FTE-based model to a technology-based model where you're leading with a platform and you're leading with a data strategy and you pull services along is a much better foundational model just in general, right? You're not dependent on people. And actually you can scale with technology in ways that you can't necessarily scale with people. So when I think about our international strategy and where we want to go, I'm thinking just as IBM would launch their supply chain product called Sterling, you launch it globally and then you pull in consultants underneath. So when I think about how we take Blue, our open ecosystem platform, I think about how we launch our platform first, and then how do you bring data along? That's a very, very tried and true way of actually scaling versus people. Our industry has always scaled people up, right? That is not the most effective way of ensuring consistency and service and value to your clients. So we got to change the game. Now, where are we? We're in the muddy middle. And I mean that honestly. We have an inertia system and a system that is very FTE based focused, meaning if I don't have a person in the seat, I do not get paid. That is a perverse incentive to me driving growth from my client. Because what I want to do is I want to put more people in the seats, even if they're not doing great things, to actually jack up the revenue I get, regardless of whether or not we've actually performed on the other side. Now, at Horizon Media, we have mixed models, we have incentives on top, we have some performance-based models. But if I fast forward to the future, if I can take my platform and plug it into the client's ad technology stack, which connects into their ERP system, I now can actually track the dollar I spent on media all the way down to how many cars they've sold. And you know what? I should get paid on how many cars they got sold.
That's never going to happen.
Oh, it's absolutely going to happen. 12 months from now.
You really want that to happen?
Yes, absolutely. Because then our incentives are completely aligned together. And then when they make more cars and they sell more cars, I make more money.
Yeah, listen, I've been in the SaaS business 25, 30 years. I would not want that. Just pay me for my software every month. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be responsible for your car, whether it sells or not.
I know, but in the marketing world, our whole job as a marketer, not to say I'm a software company, but my whole job as a marketer is to make sure your brand is known well, that you become a beloved brand, and that you sell widgets, whatever those widgets may be. That is my job. And we have in this industry put a barrier in place about marketing qualified lead. What does that mean? What does a marketing qualified lead mean? I don't know. I get paid for some of those things. I don't know. Is it a download of a white paper? What about a sales qualified lead? I'm even better doing sales qualified lead, meaning that my salesperson has a number to call and a person to contact. I'd rather get paid for that than a marketing qualified lead. So we need to move to metrics that are outcome based, which are partnership metrics with our clients. If I roll back when I first started this industry and you talked about an agency of record, I don't know how we're on this conversation. This is not what I was prepped for, but it's all good.
No,
it's all good. When we were agency of record, that meant you were in partnership with your brand. When you won, they won, and you worked with them day in and day out. A CMO left, a media planner left, you didn't get fired. Okay, somehow in this industry, we've gotten to the point when a CMO comes in, you automatically get fired as a media agency. I mean, I'm being facetious, but at some point you're challenged with that.
Yep.
We need to move to the place where you are central to the shareholders and the CEO, and you're driving the metric of the business. If we get to that place, you are then essential to the business, and you are a partner, and we bring back the concept of what it meant to be an agency of record.
Yep. All right, let's work our way back to AI. We use a simple. No, I mean, no, it's not his fault.
No, I'm sorry. You let me go on. What can I tell you?
No, you were on the roll. We use a simple framework at Section.
How many people do we have on live stream now? It's probably 2.
Oh, no, there's a couple thousand. We use a simple framework. I call it, it's crude, but it works. It's called cut and create. McKinsey will call it efficiency and growth. Using AI to be more efficient, using AI to grow. So cut means cut workflows, cut tasks, cut unnecessary vendors, cut jobs for some, that will be an inevitable outcome of the application of AI inside of organizations, for some organizations. create means create new revenue streams, new products, new services, enter new markets, hopefully create net new jobs at the organizational level and at the at society level, right? We want more jobs, not less. How do you guys think about it here at Horizon? Is it an efficiency engine? Is it a growth engine? Sounds like growth for sure, because you're hoping to use AI via Blue to leverage back into the value chain in a more significant way, right? How do you think about these other applications?
I actually think it's very short-sighted to think it's one or the other. And the reason why I say this is the hype of AI came out when I was at IBM, and it was all about cutting your QA resources in IT, right? So it was all about cutting. How do I actually really make it, how do I make it actually more efficient for my technologists to do things? And I think there was a real value there overall, but it quickly became apparent to me that you needed AI to be a thought partner for you, which is all about growth. So here at Horizon, the Blue platform we talked about is a customer-facing platform. It's for our clients to use in collaboration with us. We've recently just brought in AgentSpace, which is Google's suite of Gemini tools behind our firewall. That's about how we work at Horizon. And it's less about the jobs I cut. It's about how the jobs get changed at Horizon. So no longer do I have a person just focused on the Excel spreadsheet. I have somebody actually thinking about the Excel spreadsheet and what it means and how they actually present strategies. So I'm much more that the cut is less of an issue about more transformation, unless it's a very specific task. Like I had one of my business school friends call me and say he's starting an offshore company. I said, I don't think it's a very good idea right now. Like you don't need an offshore company anymore, right? Those jobs will go away. But the thought leadership jobs of using something like Horizon AI or AgentSpace becomes a thought partner, which allows you to have better insight. And if you get stuck, the most remarkable thing is you just say, I'm stuck. And the machine comes back to you and gives you ideas about how to get unstuck, which is, if you've ever had a really great brainstorming partner, that's what these machines will become to us. So therefore, I'm much more on the camp of growth.
So how long are you willing to pay for AI for before seeing ROI internally? I'm not talking about Blue. I'm talking about AgentSpace, or like how do you think about this? Or do you need to see the ROI or not?
Look, we're already seeing the ROI. So within AgentSpace, we've had it deployed to 150 people within the organization. Those 150 people that are in the organization are already coming to me, giving me use cases about how their job has changed. Now remember, all the Gemini tools are now facing my databases. So it goes into my PowerPoint. The way we put together RFPs right now is almost automatic. How do you get a perspective on a new client based on old prospective briefs that were there? Like the access that we have, how we actually do research now. How do we get a thought piece about brand identity, brand impressions versus performance impressions? We've had people think about that before, but it's squirreled away in our SharePoint database, which no one can get out. Now Michelle's team can go in and actually use the Gemini tools to go into that and search through it and get insight out of it almost immediately. Like those are the things that are working on productivity.
When does the rest of the org get it?
Yeah, well, that's the question that keeps coming right now. So yes, the rollout is happening. The rollout is happening. And you know, Google has made it very convenient for us to roll it out, which I'm very excited about. They're a good partner.
That's like code for something. I'm not sure what that. But you didn't answer my question. When does the rest of the org get it?
The rest of the organization will have it, I would think, by the end of Q1.
Oh, that's all. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
It's not very far off.
That's great.
And I have never seen a technology like this adopted so quickly. People banging down my doors, asking me to get on to we're calling it Horizon AI.
Yep.
It's amazing.
We just, Moderna has just made public that it's been 3 years now from their first deployment. Now they use ChatGPT Enterprise. They first built their own client on top of the GPT API. Now they have their own. Then now they use ChatGPT Enterprise, and they're using, of course, GPT-5. They just made public that they have 120, on average, conversations per day per employee. Yeah, that's a crazy number.
Oh, and actually,
so this is your point. Like,
it's happening. I mean,
rate of adoption.
The bigger issue we have right now, which is the reason why we love working with you guys, is teaching our people how to do prompts and how to communicate with the machine. because you can't ask it just the questions we would ask one another. You have to be very specific about how you ask the question, how the prompting is done. Please ask me 10 questions, but please ask them in sequence for me. / like I want you to be my thought partner. But so you guys have been really, really helpful for us in understanding what does it mean about AI. The other thing we had to really do is send out responsibilities to the organization about your role in this new powerful technology, which means you can't blame that your dog ate your lunch, right? You got to say, I'm taking responsibility for the answers. So if I send something to my client and it's wrong, it's not the machine's fault. It's your fault that you didn't actually do the right diligence to actually get that done. And I think that's a learning also, which I think is giving people comfort, meaning that your job's not going to go away. Your job only gets more important to actually screen these things before you actually send it out either to the organization or take a point of view on it. And that's a new learning that we got from you guys, by the way. I would just let you know.
Good. See, you're getting ROI. Some. Yeah, I think the people who use AI the most actually fear it the least. If you use AI a lot, you realize it's useful and pretty smart, but it's not taking my job anytime soon, and I don't think it ever will.
And all the scare that the creative organizations were going to go away, right? There's going to be writing copy headlines, and no one's going to be around it. That's all like it was nonsense.
And so, how do you then teach people not to over rely on AI? Are you worried about that? Are you worried about clients now getting more generic work from your team because they've just sort of used AI and every other agency is using AI and nothing is standing out as being distinct and different?
Well, I know that's why I think the idea of the smaller data set that we're going after, which is I call it the Horizon Way, like the AI is pointed towards the Horizon Way. So in my mind, what we get from the Horizon Way should be unique in the marketplace about how we're going after something, how I pitch differently. Now, Google has that little button that I can actually search the World Wide Web to get all information. And I think that's where you get in trouble sometime. And that's where you get more hallucinations. That's where you sort of get things being made up. So those are the things we're training people not to do as much.
What's next? Well, what's next? So Horizon Blue is in with every client.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, we have to get every client on Blue.
Okay, how long is that going to take?
Forget the look.
A year or two?
I think it's a year. 18 months. I mean, the interesting thing about the innovation cycles that are happening on this technology is it's happening so damn fast that clients want to adopt it. So the adoption curve's there. I'm more worried about the initial training. So we're partnering with you even to do the intro training for our clients, right? Just the basics, and then we put them on Blue. I think people have to come through that discovery process because this is not as though it's a search engine. This is a very powerful tool that you have to take ownership for. You have to understand it's a debate partner. So that's the time gap. It's not about the technology. It's about getting people up the curve of understanding and learning. And I'm very focused on the idea that at Horizon, we're going to usher in this innovation responsibly, meaning that we're transparent. We show you where the data is. We educate you about how to use the tool. It's very easy to throw a chat functionality on top of something else and just say, go at it. I think that's a danger. So we have to, just as IBM did ushering in AI in a responsible way, we have to do the same thing here for the marketing and media landscape. So you're going to hear me talk a lot more about that because I do think that the aha of, oh my God, I'm done. No. It's more responsibility on you have on your shoulders.
So Bob, you talked about roles changing. I would say media planning or buying, when you think about the list of entry-level jobs that everybody's been saying might go away because of AI, right? Software engineer, entry-level job, right? Maybe media buying and planning. Like, are you worried about the loss of entry-level jobs? To me, it seems crazy, but
I think that the entry-level jobs are just going to change, right? Because in school now, I mean, I learned about Notebook LM, which is a Gemini tool, right? From my son who was using it at Columbia Business School, right? So the students are getting it before we're actually realizing how to use it at business. And then I have guys here who put reports out now, not only put out the research reports, but now they're putting out a podcast on the research report, which is brilliant because then if your client doesn't read your report, they can listen to it on the way in. But I didn't know about that. The students found out about that before because that's the new Cliff Note. Do you remember those yellow books we used to have? Well, no more yellow books. They have these Notebook LM things that they listen to. And it gives you a multiple choice test also at the same time. So I believe the next generation of kids that are coming in are going to actually push the envelope on what we should be doing with technology and what the new job should look like. And oh, by the way, you want me to do a spreadsheet? Okay, I can do that in a minute now versus I used to train somebody to do a reconciliation spreadsheet in a week because the kids just have access to this technology and tools in ways that we did not have. So I see the entry-level jobs still there. They're just going to be very different.
And what is your expectation going forward of your leaders and executives inside the company? Like, what's their role?
All right. Well, the first challenge I've given out is do not use traditional search for a month. I want you to use an AI engine. I'm going to say which one I prefer. An AI engine for the month. And I believe that that will change your life. And as you said before, the more that they use that AI engine, the more that they understand what it could do for them in their job here. That principle now, when I bring in agent space from Google and I bring it behind the firewall, they're already used to sort of what this could mean for their in the consumer life. So they start thinking about how their job is differently. The frontline folks, we call them our BSTs or our client architects who are client facing to our clients. I mean, we've given it to 3 or 4 of them, and it's just remarkable about how they know their conversations have changed when they go in and talk to their clients, meaning that they load in the information, they load in the agenda, and then they basically talk with Horizon AI, and Horizon AI said, hey, these are the thought questions you probably should talk to. How would you answer them? So it's a whole different conversation.
I'll give you a pro tip. If Bob is expecting you to be using AI this frequently, I'll give you 2. One is cheap, one costs $100. The cheap one is Post-it note on your monitor, and right on the Post-it note, ask AI. That's all you do. I did that for a year and a half. In January, I did the $100 upgrade, which is I bought a second monitor. Well, actually a third. I've got 2 monitors already. I bought a third monitor. It's my AI monitor. It sits on the right-hand side of my desktop next to my primary monitor. That's my AI-only monitor. On that is 1 browser open, 3 tabs. For me, it's Perplexity, GPT-5, and Anthropic's Claude, my 3 favorite AIs. So that's my AI co-pilot. And I did it because I wanted that monitor in my line of sight so I could always see my AI.
That's awesome.
And I wanted, though, it not to be in my primary workspace. I'm the human, I'm the pilot, they're the co-pilot, so I'll cut and paste that work that I do with my AI into my main workspace. For now, I'm still running this show.
Amazing.
You know,
that's a great tip. Can I borrow that one?
You can. It's $100. So if you get your requisition in before Bob changes his mind.
It's a different engine. Like, why do you use all 4?
I think Perplexity is just better is the closest Google replacement, I would say. And just compare. I often will challenging questions. I'll use both Claude and GPT-5. I just like these AIs are a little bit crazy at times, and I like to keep them honest. So I'll literally, for more complex tasks, I'll just cut and paste and be running both of those conversations in parallel and just bouncing back and forth. And often I'll get pretty much the same answer, and sometimes the same ridiculous hallucination. You know. But hallucinations. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, wow. Yeah. They've all been trained the same way, basically, right? I also prefer Claude's tone. So for business writing and business thinking, I think Claude has got a better tone. I also want to support Anthropic. They're the only AI company with. They're the one AI company with our well-being top of mind. Humanity's well-being is top of mind for Anthropic. They care deeply about safety and alignment, and they back that up with a significant research team for AI safety and human alignment. And the other AIs don't, and I won't give $1. Now that you asked, I won't give $1 to Facebook or XAI. So I will, and no, we are not. No one at our company is allowed to use those AIs or spend money on AIs that are managed by people that don't care about the health of our society.
Yeah.
But that rant is over. One other quick tip. This is a cool thing if you like GPT. It's just the widget. So if you really want to get that 30-day kind of I think Bob's exactly right. Shift your behavior from Google. Just extract the GPT, or for me, that's my sort of Swiss Army knife AI, and just drop it on your phone. And it just kind of just being that front and center every day.
Yeah, no,
just starts to change that behavior.
And I didn't say Google. I said any search engine.
Yeah, and okay, yeah.
To be clear, Google is a very good partner of mine.
We were just told by someone at Marketo, right? The head of AI at Marketo told us that traffic coming from AI conversations was 8 to 23 times more likely to convert. And their conversion moment was book a meeting. So their B2B sales, right?
Yeah.
8 to 23 times more likely to book a meeting than traffic coming from Google.
Yeah.
So that's not surprising to you.
I don't think it's surprising to me, because I think the trust level, it's almost like when you first were looking at Waze, like you didn't trust it in the beginning, right? But then it got you to the right place and you didn't hit a car, and you got you to the right path. It's like de facto now, like that's all I use, right? So I think we're in that early adoption curve. And I think people are now more trusting the AI answer engines in general, which would drive more traffic because you're more likely to click on that link and drive the traffic. I think the legacy search engines have a bad rap because you're getting all this advertisement before and you're not really sure what you're going to get. So that doesn't surprise me. It's actually an encouraging statistic, actually.
I'm also kind of impressed, frankly, that Google is willing to go long on AI answers.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have a choice in some ways, but they're kind of doing it to themselves, right? I mean, they are absolutely crushing.
They have to.
They have no choice,
right?
But they are absolutely crushing there.
But it is an interesting strategy around how Google is doing that, right? Where Microsoft is sort of taking Copilot to wrap around their productivity tools. It's a very different strategy that they're all going for, because Microsoft seems to be feeding its own ecosystem and trying to reinforce its own ecosystem around Copilot, where Google is still going after the wild open world and helping you with everyday tools. Not very dissimilar to Gmail, and how they embedded Gmail into everyone's ethos system, right? And then that became sort of an advertising and data model for them over time. So it is interesting how these two technology companies are battling out. And then you have Amazon. So
in AI, you think they're going to be a player?
Amazon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, no, I do. Look, I think the intelligence that, yes, I don't.
They have all the data.
Look, the way that we are all going to benefit from these great technology companies is to actually leverage the technology innovations that are coming out of an Amazon and Microsoft, and an Amazon.
Yep.
And I was, what happens with Anthropic, I'm very proud of what they're doing. Where that goes and how it is, it could be a feed into other companies, but those guys are going to drive the innovation. And honestly, as a company, as an independent agency, I'm partnering in my open ecosystem to take those innovations to my clients.
Yep.
And that's the only way that I'm going to be able to compete in the marketplace.
So one of my thoughts, Bob, when you play with AI, for me, the insight I got a year and a half ago was interface friction will be less and less tolerated. When you play with AI, chat AI, right? Travel planning is the best example.
Okay.
If you travel plan with a browser and Google, you got 20 tabs open, right? Travelocity, TripAdvisor, you're reading reviews, you're bouncing around. It's a total nightmare. And you travel plan with ChatGPT, and all that interface friction melts away. And if you trust the answers, which we're not yet there, but we'll get there, right? We'll get there. Those answers will be great. So how do you think about, would you agree, and how do you think about that as it relates to your clients? Like, do you think all of us are going to have less tolerance for interface friction, even in a B2B sense? Like, we're going to want our systems and our access to our data and content to work that way, like no friction?
We're gonna expect that our brands do not interrupt us, so that we respect them. And what the great thing is right now, there's actually a company called Firsthand, that's an AI-based company that is delivering content in ad units that you and I interact with in an AI-like fashion. That's a less intrusive way of interacting into the conversation. So brands have to use tools and technologies where I'm part of that conversation in the answer engine, and I won't even call it an answer engine, the customer discovery process, in a way where we're not intruding on how they're discovering things. And that is all about how you do content. That's how you show up socially. It's a hard, marketers' jobs have just become much harder because the customer discovery process has changed. So where does that make me fit as an agency? I now become a partner with this marketer to figure out how I actually show up and how I don't become intrusive, because the pop-up ads aren't going to work anymore, right? To your point.
Yeah.
So we've got to get into the customer discovery conversations, I would call it, in a very unique and interesting way. And I don't think, I mean, Perplexity talked about an ad unit, right? That we're going to do an ad. I don't think it's the ad unit anymore. I think it's about how you show up, how you produce content on your sites so that the answer engines pick you up. It's at least it's that simple to start with, but I think it gets more sophisticated after that.
I can't resist asking, is GEO, whatever the hell that is, that much different from SEO, or is it just the same thing in an...
We should ask my head.
Is there an expert here?
Head of search here,
This is
yeah.
the guy?
Yes.
Come on, here,
Come on, tell us.
You're on.
You're on.
It's just thousands online around the world.
Represent it.
Just, introduce yourself.
You got 3
Hi,
minutes.
I'm Joe Sperzel. I lead the SEO practice here at Verizon. Short answer, yes, it is different. Traditional SEO and the foundational tenets that we always propose to clients are, yes, of course, very important and still produce fruit within the GEO, AEO, whatever you want to call it, ecosystem. And our clients that have been doing SEO very well for the last couple of years have done very, very well within the new ecosystems and AI search. But the purview of what SEO used to be has expanded exponentially into affiliate spaces, different types of content being pulled from all across the web, and partnerships that Google has had with Reddit, and they just made one with Instagram. So I would assume in the near future we'll see a lot of Instagram within those AI responses. So it has taken the foundational SEO and kind of just blown it up into being across many different facets of the marketing world, right? It's not just search marketing anymore, right? It's social, affiliate, search, all together, working in partnership. So it's really, it is important, but it is. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, let them know. Let them know.
This is a real-time headcount request right now.
Yeah, it's very smart of Google. Think about it. It's very smart of Google to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Extremely smart. Like, how do I help my clients get in the middle of that new ship that's happening, and bringing tools to us like this and being first to market with them? Like, that's the sort of innovations that we want to capture.
That Marketo guy I talked about said to me, you should have someone dedicated to Reddit. And I was like, what? Like, I mean, I get it. I get it, sort of. But yeah, like, right.
I want to be in the conversation there.
And they're all training on Reddit data, obviously, all day long. Okay, we have to wrap up. I have to ask. Most of the people who I talk to who are around your age usually say, I'm retiring. I'm going to go work on the golf game. I want nothing to do with this AI thing. This just scares the shit out of me. You seem to have reacted the other way, which is you seem to be all in, high energy, very committed. Why?
Well, my golf game sucks.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the first answer. But I actually really, I did try.
Which your team clearly knows.
Yeah, no, I really did try. I did try to make that work, and it wasn't very successful.
Okay.
You know what? A part of me, as I realized that the marketing and media landscape was not taking advantage of the technologies, saw IBM, I thought it was a perfect opportunity for me to come in and really try to shake up the industry. So this idea of transformation in marketing and media, it's a tough machine to change, but that's kind of the thrilling part of it. And then Bill Konigsberg, the founder of Verizon, to sort of give me the opportunity to sort of take what he's built over 35 years and move it. It was a perfect opportunity. So that's why.
Great. I want to thank Horizon Media. You've been a wonderful host today, all day, and we love our partnership with your team. Thank you, Bob, for joining us today for AI ROI. And thank you, everyone around the world, for tuning in, some of you for 7 hours. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
So yes, thank you very much for those of you online, in person. One more time for Greg and for Bob. Greg's been carrying us through for 7 hours. Bob, thank you for your authenticity. Going off script, I'm going to need that RFP maker from you. I can't believe my opportunity. I missed my opportunity to say live from New York, but I will say that's all, folks, from New York. For those of you online, I will leave you in the very capable hands of Maxwell. Thank you very much. We hope to see you soon.
Folks, what a treat today has been, and incredibly smooth too. I have to give props to our team. There's at least a dozen, probably more people on the section side working all this. I will miss some names for sure, but Gloria, Candace, Azalea, Rachel, Taylor, so many people. Naeem in the chat, Tom, Kyra, I'm sorry, I'm missing folks, but I have to recognize the human component of this conference. My job is simple from here on out. I have 4 minutes to close us out. So we'll share some slides and I'll tell you what's next. You've heard from leaders who've built AI strategies from scratch. They've scaled adoption across tens of thousands of employees. They delivered real measurable ROI. Now, I posit, it is your turn. Section can be your AI transformation partner, whether you need to build an AI-powered workforce, deploy an AI-powered coach, such as our coach, Prof AI, to your entire team, or benchmark where you stand today. It's actually a really good place to start. We've helped, as you've heard today, organizations transform their teams from AI curious to AI native. So if you're ready to make it happen for you and your team, you should book a meeting and let's build your roadmap. But maybe you're thinking, I need to level myself up first. Perfect. You can also become a section member yourself first and get unlimited access to all the upskilling tools that we offer. That includes live and on-demand courses from foundational to advanced to help you use AI better, find AI use cases, et cetera, et cetera. We've made AI for business our business. So join us as a member. You'll also get access to monthly office hours with AI experts who can help you tackle your toughest questions. And of course, as a thing, thank you for joining us today for the whole 7 hours, some of you. You can use code ROI30 as the code for 30% off your section membership. ROI30, you can catch that on the screen here. One more thing, one final thing. You should mark your calendars for November 6th. It will not be 7 hours, but it will be about a half a day. And it's going to be an event we're hosting called Become an AI Builder in a Day. This is going to be a free event, again, focused on accelerating your automation and workflow augmentation skills. So if today was all about strategy, ROI, big picture conversation, November 6th is going to be about rolling up your sleeves and building. It's going to be practical and you'll walk away with real AI builder skills. Come and join us for that. Scan the code. And I think that's it from me, folks. We'll leave this slide up for you to grab the QR codes for whatever piqued your interest, hopefully all of it. And thanks again for joining us today and for being part of this conversation. Now go build something amazing. And until the next time, thank you all.